like to call to order the Village Board meeting of December the 11th, 2014 to order at 5:30 p.m. And I please ask Clerk Simsky to call the roll.
Mayor Hunter.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Addington is absent. Trustee Barker.
Here.
Trustee Barry.
Here.
Trustee Nero.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca. Here. Village Manager May.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek.
Here. Can I please ask everybody to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job.
Good evening. Going through the open forum again, we have no open forum request, so I'll move on to reports. The first one is the mayor. I have several items. The first thing was at DJ's Sports Bar and Grill. They celebrated their 19th annual holiday open house on December 2nd. And it was attended by over 40 different business people in the community, and we want to thank DJs for hosting that. The 29th at the Small Business Saturday and the opening of our holidays, I had the opportunity to have coffee with the mayor at Sweet and Savory, and I want to thank them. We had several residents come, and it was very enjoyable to sit and chat with them on an informal basis. I have this evening a couple awards and presentations I'd like to make, and I think the first one, our Planning and Zoning Commissioner, Roy Fleet, is retiring from that commission, and he has a 8-year term, which he served for the village on planning and zoning. And I'd like to present you, which I'll hop out here.
Thank you.
Again, with a plaque that says it honors F. Roy Fleet, member of the Village's Planning and Zoning Commission, 2006 to 2014. And thank you for serving. Thank you. You're welcome to say anything, but you got to go there.
It is the first. I've never been on this side of the bench, but I'd like to say in my 8 years, it was a great time as an engineer. I really appreciate the level of cognizance that everybody puts in that are around the bench, both the men and the women. It's a great committee to be on, and I'm glad that I had the time to serve Westmont. Thank you.
And again, thank you, Roy. Several months ago, we started our Customer Appreciation, Service Appreciation Award. Through the community, we have so many staff and volunteers that provide customer service to our residents and those business people that come to our community. I think we want to honor some individuals that went over and above in their customer service to the public. I have two individuals tonight I'd like to ask to come up and recognize them. Kim Nicole, who is municipal service. She was nominated for going above and beyond the call of duty, helping an elderly resident apply for a FEMA grant due to flooding. And Greg Pankey is one of our great volunteers with EMA, Emergency Management Agency. Greg typically helps out with all the events throughout the year, including the Red, White, and Barbecue, the parades, the 4th of July, the Taste of Westmont, and any time we need assistance, Greg is always there. So I ask both of you to please come up. I've got a token of appreciation for you. Okay, my last item, our Economic Development Committee consists of community representatives that serve a 2-year term, providing feedback to developer builders and community investors at the initial stages of a project. We have 2 community members retiring, or just one right now. Nancy Martin will no longer be serving on that committee, and tonight I'd like to make mention of the ones I'm going to reappoint or appoint to that committee, beginning with the new year. Frank Brady, who's a resident and a business owner. Corinne Beller, resident and a business owner. Greg Pill, and a resident and business owner. Bill Califat, resident and a business owner. School District 201 will have a representative. School District 60 will have a representative, and the Westmont Park District will provide a representative. And that once a month at 9 o'clock, they meet right here in the chambers, where they'll review the initial steps for plans, to give feedback to the developers or the builders, to give them some direction before they go to planning and zoning and ultimately the village board. So those are my appointments that I'll be making for the Economic and Development Committee. I have no other business this evening, and Clerk Simsky.
Well, first of all, I want to extend my sympathy to Harold and his family and the Gasek family. That was a very tragic, that's what they all just went through. And I want to congratulate everybody on a great holidays parade, including the mayor, who always is in charge, running the show from behind. And I have many thanks for our holidays 5K Rotary Run, for the people that really stepped up to the plate. And the first one I have to mention is Kim Heller, because she just took up the bull by the horns and really went after it. Our Public Works Department and Jimmy Wright, particularly. Police Department, especially Brian Gruen, who worked very hard with us on that. And the Knights of Columbus, for their generosity, they allowed us to use their building for registering and to give away our awards at the end of the parade. Of course, the Park District, who gave us unending support, and all our runners who participated, which was like 148, which is a good turnout. And thanks also to Mayor Gunther for announcing the start of the race and the winners at the end for us. And I do want to remind all our candidates running for office for the April municipal election, for the village and the library boards, that they're filing their packets will start Monday morning, December 15th at 7 o'clock a.m. and continue until December 22nd, Monday, when the filing ends at 5 o'clock p.m. So those of you that want to run better get your information to us. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, I wish everybody a very happy holiday season.
Thank you. Attorney Zemanek.
That's a long agenda. I'll keep it short. Happy holidays to all, and that's it.
Manager May.
Mayor, I wanted to give everybody a construction update, despite the fact that it's the middle of December. We do have a construction update. We were able to finish the second of the 2 resurfacing projects that we had this year. 2 projects this year. It's the first year of a 3-year program where we intend to get to approximately 30 miles of the 60 miles of streets that we have in town. And the weather conditions changed enough that we were able to complete that last Friday. So we were happy to see that happen, because it would have been a difficult winter with the snow plowing had we not finished that. Also, usually we offer this after the new year, but there's already been interest in the Holiday Light recycling program we have. It's a little subset of the electronics recycling. But as everybody's replacing their decorations and looking for a way to dispose of the old, we have a service or a container that can be dropped off. The lights can be dropped off at the Southside Fire Station at 6015 South Cass. It's in place now and will be there through the end of January. That was all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. When I call upon the trustees, if you can not only give a trustee report, but if your committee report at the same time, and I'll start with Trustee Barry.
I just have a couple things. I'd like to thank the community and Chief Mulhern and the Westmont Police Department for all they did during my brother-in-law's services and so forth. So again, thank you to the community. I'd also like to remind everyone during the holiday season that while we're out shopping and if we can't find what we want in Westmont, if we can at least buy our fuel and maybe get our dinners and our lunches in Westmont, that is greatly appreciated during the holiday season when everyone is out. To my committees, I have Building and Zoning Committee, I have no report, but the Environmental Committee, we'd like to thank Mike Ramsey, John Sobchak, and Tyler Teesh for promoting the EIC water conservation and our new green page on the village website, which can be viewed at westmont.illinois.gov/green. The EIC will begin monthly meetings starting in January of 2015, and I believe the next meeting will be January 5th. Important that the last electronics recycling date for 2014 is December 20th. So that will continue the third Saturday of each month from 8 to noon. And again, we're not doing that in front here anymore. We're doing that at the Downers Grove Township Highway Facility, which is on East Quincy, almost to Clarendon Hills in Richmond. And that is what I have this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Scott.
Thank you. Nothing for reports, but I would like to just go to the EDC. And first, I would like to introduce our special guest here tonight for a new business in town. It's the El Masri family, who owns the Dollar Town at 220 West Ogden Avenue. And if you'd please come up and tell us all about your business.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us here today. We'd like to thank the community. We'd like to thank you all for having us in Westmont. I'll start with introducing myself, my family, and then Noura will go ahead and tell you more about the business. So my name is Giyat Al-Masri. I have a master's degree in environmental science and management. I used to work as the regional manager for environmental consultancy. I just came here to the United States like 3 months ago, and I'm glad to have my own business here in Westmont. My father, he's a businessman. He started in Syria, and then he was working in Saudi Arabia, and he's been here for 2 years in the States. And for the last year, he's been looking for the best location to start the business, and Westmont was our selection. And Noura will go ahead and introduce herself and tell you more about the business.
Hello, my name is Noura Al-Masri. I've been here in the state for 15 years. I have a business information technology master degree from DePaul University. I've been driving all these 10 years, the past 10 years in Ogden. I really love the city of Westmont. Have a lot of friends over here, and we were lucky to find the location that we are at 220 West Ogden, right between Battery Rental and O'Reilly. We started our business at 28th of November at Black Friday. We didn't want to delay because of the holiday. Everyone was waiting, so we try to carry everything anyone needs, from dollar item until $10. But the majority in our store is like between 50 cents and $5. What we're trying to do at our store to carry all the items quality items in good price. We know that people in Westmont used to get quality products, so we want to respect that and provide you with the best products in a good price. We have from school supplies, household items, personal care, home decor, food. Our food section is not yet complete, but it will be completed like within the next 2 to 3 days, 3 weeks, sorry. And then we're trying to get also everything that anyone asks or suggests that to carry, so just to serve everyone. And we're welcoming any suggestion from anyone who visits our store. Everyone is welcome to visit. Our upcoming deals, we have 10% off Christmas items starting this Friday at noon until Sunday 9 p.m. Our business hour every day from 9 to 9, even Sunday. We are there waiting for anyone that needs something, that we are there. We are there to serve you. You can find us at dollar stores, I'm sorry, Dollar Town Stores. That's on Facebook. Follow us at Dollar Town on Twitter. And our website is dollar-town.com. And it's not ready yet. It's up, but it doesn't have all the information that you need. It will have it within the next month. But we're updating our Facebook page for any information. Also, we have some job openings, so we would like to have people in Westmont to come and apply. We would like to have job opening for Westmont and anything you need. Some people didn't like that we don't have everything with dollar, but if we have everything with dollar, we will not be able to carry everything that anyone needs and the quality things that we are carrying right now. A lot of people coming to our store and they say, oh, it's a cozy store, we like it, we'll come back. And we have already many returning customers that they said it's different than any other store that we went to, so they're liking it. We hope to see everyone come and visit us. Like I said, we're open to any suggestion, anything that you think we should do differently. We are here to serve the community. We're so happy that we are in that nice village as Westmont, and we're also offering a teacher discount. So for the teachers who buy more than $50 for the school programs, we offer discount, and also we are opening. We can get great deals for the nursery homes and other programs for school other than, special orders. We can take special orders for that. We work together to satisfy everyone's needs. And thank you so much for having us. Please visit our store. We'll be happy to serve the community and work with you to serve you better.
Thanks for
Thank
choosing Westmont.
Thank you so much. We are so happy. Thank you.
Next, sir, we have the Economic Development Committee was invited to tour the world-class Macron Group facility at 850 Pasquinelli Drive. The Macron Group is a world leader in Larry, how do we say this?
Microscopy.
Thank you. Analysis and education. It was a wonderful experience to learn about the services and the training they are doing for clients all around the world. To learn more about the Macron Group, please visit www.macron.com. And I wasn't able to attend it, but if anybody else can tell me how things went there, or let the village know, people know, I'd appreciate it. Next, we have, seems like Mariano's has erected a sign outside on their property announcing a 2015 opening, I hope. Is it 2015 or 16? 16?
Beginning of 16.
Beginning of 16.
First quarter of 16.
Okay, thank you. Hardee's on Ogden will be opening by Christmas. And personally, I would like to thank the committee members of the Economic Development Committee for serving all these past years. They just do a phenomenal job. They're residents, business people who have an input on potential developments and businesses coming into the different various parts of the town. It's been an honor to serve with them. Some of them are very opinionated. And I don't want to mention any names, Greg Hill, but I'd like to thank them all, because I know the committee assignments are going to be changing, so.
Yes.
And other than that, that's it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Nero.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. I want to begin by first thanking you for coordinating the parade, the holidays parade. I heard nothing but compliments. And, behind the scenes, you really run a tight ship and get everybody in the right spot, and it's amazing to see. But you do a great job, and I know I'm not the only one, but everybody really appreciates it. Thank you. And the second thing is related to my committee, Public Works. Just really wanted to thank, big thanks to Public Works for everybody. I know I've seen them, all the beautiful holiday decorations we have. They look terrific. Everybody loves them, and thanks a lot. We really appreciate it. And the last thing is just happy holidays to everybody. That's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Barker.
A couple of things. We just finished, before this meeting, we had a code enforcement committee meeting, and I would like to pat those folks on the back. We've expanded the number of officers, We're evaluating constantly, they're constantly evaluating their work. They presented us with monthly or quarterly updates as to how effective they are. And they've taken it from a reactive kind of a situation to proactive code enforcement. And it's, that's good for the community, it's good for our property values. So I want to pat them on the back for doing such a good job. And then also, I would like to invite everybody to the Westmont First meeting, which is next Wednesday, 7 o'clock here in the conference room. And the agenda should be published by Monday. But we're working on a number of things. One is the Neighborhood Pride Program. And there is going to be a delivered piece of mailing that will have several different pieces of information in there. Talking about the Adopt a Hydrant, which we still need, even though we're lacking the snow this year so far. But the Adopt a Hydrant program, the Neighborhood Pride program, and an alley cleanup program. And we're asking everybody to take those out and read them, and please participate in their community. I read in Neighbors Magazine several times, together we can accomplish great things, and it's working here. You can see it around every corner, so thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. Committee reports, nothing to report on public safety, but the next meeting will be February 5th, I believe, and that agenda will be coming out sometime before that, usually a week or two. I urge everyone, this is, again, I say it every time, police, fire, public safety, they work for the community, they work for the residents, and these are open meetings. So, I encourage people to come to these committee meetings whenever they can. Also, I too wanted to extend sympathy to the Gasick family, to Don and Rita and Tracy and Harold. Our hearts are all just breaking for what you've had to go through, so wanted to extend that. Also, I don't know if people were aware, but there was big mob action on Cass Avenue. I don't know if the chief heard about the mob action on Cass Avenue. Well, Bob Plowman actually started it. It's wonderful. It's a cash mob. Bob Plowman got things going, and every month, a group of people, residents, and it's growing, we earmark a business on Cass Avenue in our business district. And Bob Plowman has done a great job of this. The mob goes into the business throughout the day, and the idea is go in and spend some money here in Westmont. And we've done it twice now, Blue Beaker, and most recently Westmont Floral. It's amazing what our town has to offer. So look for more mob action on Cass, and hopefully you'll join us. And who knows, maybe we'll come to Dollartown sometime and do some mob action there. It's a lot of fun, so wanted to say that. And just finally, congrats to Kim and to Greg. We have phenomenal customer service in our community, so it's nice that we recognize people. That's all I have.
Well, thank you. And Clerk Simsky?
Well, I do. I want to announce that we have in a bit that we're going to have a public information meeting on April 2nd, and then I have something for Communications Director McIntyre to talk about.
Thank you very much. Wanted to quickly announce that Metra is having their 9th annual safety poster contest. And what they're doing is inviting the community, all citizens, to make submissions for their poster contest, basically highlighting safety for Metra. So to learn more information and to sign up, you want to go to metracontest.com. And just so people can have a timeline, the deadline for submissions is Friday, January 30th. So once again, if you want to learn more about this and sign up, go to metracontest.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we move on to the next agenda item, I'm going to ask Chief Mulhern if you could come to the podium. One of the concerns we've had for quite a while is coyotes. And I know we have an issue of several coyotes running around town, so you want to give a quick information about that?
Yes, Mayor. I've been keeping track. Anytime we see a coyote reporting, our officers respond to. I track them, and we're starting to see a little bit more increase along the areas of Burlington Street, pretty much from Lincoln a little bit to west, and then we just found a carcass of a coyote on North Wilmette this morning. And so what I would like to let all the residents know is that the village, I think it was about 6 months ago, I had a guest speaker from Willowbrook Wildlife come and give us a talk on coyotes, what to do when you're walking your dog, what to do when you're outside, how to protect yourself. So if you go to the village website, www.westmont.il.gov, and I did this early this morning to make sure it's there, just go up to the search box, put in coyote, and it'll take you to the link to the coyote page rather than having to go search through the whole website for it. On there are different brochures, different things on not only coyotes but other animals. And also that training session that we had from Willowbrook Wildlife, we videotaped. It's an hour long, but very, very informative. I'll just give one tip now for everyone who's out walking the dog and what do you do. The coyotes are becoming more and more comfortable in this area. They're becoming more and more, I would say, tame or used to humans. However, they are still afraid of us as we are afraid of them. They said they're afraid of loud noises and large items. And I thought this was unique. Take a white garbage bag that we all have in our kitchens, that we use as a tall kitchen bag, white so it's visible at night. Just carry it with you. If you see a coyote and it looks threatening or anything like that, just open the bag while you're walking the dog. Hang on to the dog. Wave the bag back and forth, open up, inflate the bag. The noise from the inflation in the bag and the movement of the white from the bag will scare the coyote off. Yelling, clapping hands, what used to be effective before, is no longer, and a white bright light. So if you can go check that website, there's very good information. We're starting to see them coming out again. This is the time of the year that they come out. The village does not trap coyotes. An officer will come out. There's not much we can do. We will just verify that it is a coyote that's a sighting. We cannot shoot them. We cannot trap them. It's against the law unless you have a trapper's license. So that's why we give this information. And if you feel you have a coyote in your area, in your neighborhood, please go to that website. It's very, very informative, and that video is well worth your hour's time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6. Items removed from the consent agenda. Are there any board members that would like any of the items removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd ask village manager to please read.
Mayor, on the consent agenda, the first item tonight is village board meeting minutes. Board to consider approval of the minutes of the village board meeting held on November 13th, 2014. Next is the October financial report. Board to consider acceptance of the financial report submitted for the month of October 2014. Then there's the finance ordinance number 16, which is in the total amount of $2,347,312.23. And also on the consent agenda are purchase orders, and there are 10 purchase orders. First one is United Meters, $75,000 for replacement of 500 water meters, residential water meters. Next purchase order is Westmont Fire Department 2% Association in the amount of $30,151.55. And this is the pass-through for the foreign fire insurance tax. Next is West Central Municipal Conference, $17,186. This is, I have to explain this one. You did already approve a purchase order at previous meeting for Pugsley and LaHaye regarding the tree planting. Because it's arranged through the consortium, we actually have to pay the consortium, and they pay Pugsley and LaHaye for the services. So this will supersede the other purchase order in the exact same amount. It's just the name changed, and it was significant enough to resubmit. Next is Westmont Park District, $12,500. Represents a quarterly amount for the annual landscape maintenance contract. Next purchase order, Doors by Russ, $12,405. This is for the replacement garage doors at the Water Division on Burlington Avenue. Next is also Westmont Park District, $8,149.08. This is relative to the salary sharing for the landscape architect services. Next purchase order, Critical Technology Solutions, $5,596.15. This is the door access controls and the security upgrades in this building, and all of that is 100% funded, reimbursed through the state grant. Next, Hornick Engineering Systems, $5,285. It's backflow certifications and water service inspections. Next is Gregory Property and Development, $5,126.53. This is to complete the punch list items remaining in the Greenleaf subdivision, and these are covered expenses that were with the security that came with the subdivision, the letter of credit. Last purchase order, Burns and McDonnell, $5,024.38 for this, I don't know if it's for the month, but it's the payment for the engineering review fees subject to permit applications. Total of purchase orders is $176,423.69, which brings the total of the purchase orders and finance ordinance to $2,523,735.92. And that completes the
Thank you.
consent agenda.
Any questions on the consent agenda? None from the board, anybody from the audience? Do I have a motion to
So
approve?
move, Seneca?
Second, Scott.
Motion made and seconded. Seeing no questions, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Moving on, agenda item number 8, public hearing. At this time, I'd like to call public hearing. We're going to conduct a public hearing regarding the property tax levy on December the 11th, 2014. And this public hearing is starting at 6:02. And I'd like our finance director, Parker, to take over.
Okay, Mayor, a lot of this will be review to the board and those that watched at the last meeting where we talked about the proposed aggregate levy. This is just going over this again, but for the benefit of any public that are here or for those who may be watching. So as we discussed at that meeting, we've got a couple of different scenarios that are shown here on the screen. You've also got these scenarios on in your packet. And the first column, the orange column, shows the 2013 levy. And you can see that the total amount that was levied at that point was about 7.8, almost 7.9 million. You can see that we've got a couple of different options. One, if we just kept the revenue constant, and you can see there we'd keep just about the same amount of revenue for the village-wide amount, the 6.1 million. And the change here is the police pension, because the police pension amount continues to go up just as a result of increasing pension costs. And so then our general fund would have a decrease of about $75,000. The other option as to what we actually expect to receive is the final column in the blue, where we actually expect to have a net change in our general fund of approximately $4,000. Again, the majority of the increase is in the police pension fund here. However, the way that the state statute works is in order to make sure that you get as much credit as you possibly can for all of the new construction that may have occurred in town, and to be able to capture all of the increase that we're able to capture to get that full amount for the police pension, we actually have to levy a higher amount. And so the green column you'll see is levying that higher amount. So we'd actually, from the village, be levying about $6.4 million with the expectation that we'll be getting about $6.2 million. You can also see on here the library's tax levy. The village levies the tax for the library because they're a component unit of the village, although the village simply passes on the levy that the library board has already approved. So I guess at that point, I'll kind of turn it over to the public. And
At this point, I'm going to open up to the public. If anybody's got a question on the tax levy ordinance that was just presented. Seeing none, I would, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing at this time.
So move, Scott.
Second, Nero.
Motion made in second to adjourn the public hearing. Roll call, please.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, unfinished business. 407, 309, and 311 West 63rd Street, Pathway Development Partners. Board to consider ordinances approving the following requests from Pathway Development Partners regarding the properties located at 407 West 63rd Street, 309 West 63rd Street, and 311 West 63rd Street, all in Westmont, 60559, for the following. 1, map amendment request to rezone the property at 407 West 63rd Street, 309 West 63rd Street, and 311 West 63rd Street from R4 PD General Resident District to Plan Development to R6 Special Resident District. 2, site and landscaping plan approval to build an assisted living facility. 3, preliminary plat subdivision. 4, zoning code variance request to reduce the required front yard setback in an R6 special resident district for the purpose of constructing parking within the setback. And 5, a zoning code variance request for the relief from the maximum allowable density in an R6 special residence district. And again, Acting Community Director Ziegler, would you like to give some additional information?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The applicant is requesting rezoning to R6, site and landscaping approval and variances to build a senior living facility with 109 units. This would include 75 assisted living units and 34 memory care units. The amenities would include dining rooms, activities, wellness, and courtyards. The applicant presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission in August and was continued for additional information and had a second public hearing in October. The applicant has also met several times with the adjacent residential neighbors and has revised building elevations and screening along the property line. The Planning and Zoning Commission made a unanimous negative recommendation based on concerns including flooding, change in density, and use, along with traffic issues on 63rd Street. Several commissioners felt a senior living facility was needed, but not at this location. The board reviewed this proposal in November and continued the item in order to provide further consideration, which is why we'll have a much briefer presentation tonight. In the meantime, our planning engineer has reviewed the detention calculations and determined that 1.5 times the amount of detention that is required for both the townhomes that are adjacent and this facility has been provided at the Muddy Waters Detention Basin. We also received a letter of support from Josh Hearn, which I passed out to all of you tonight, who has attended all of the previous meetings but couldn't be here this evening, with additional landscaping buffering along the fence line and sound mitigation for the generator. He and his wife would no longer oppose the project. The applicant has also made minor improvements to the site plan, which he will briefly review in order to bring you up to speed on the changes that have been made.
Thank you.
Good evening. Again, I'm Bob Helly of Pathway Development Partners. I'm joined with Dave Dastur of Jensen Halstead Architects, also our audiovisual consultant, and Dave Schindal of Mackey Consultants, civil engineer, and Chuck Hall of Hall Construction, a Westmont-based company. I'd like to very briefly summarize what we discussed last time and also explain the change that Jill mentioned. This is a rendering of the facility from 63rd Street. We spent a little time last time discussing the difference between our proposal as an assisted living facility and skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes that the village has had some substantial issues with in terms of parking and traffic. We tried to explain that the two are very different, both from a licensing standpoint, from building code standpoint, from a use standpoint. And that there are, within a few miles of this location, a couple of assisted living facilities that are good comparables to what we actually are proposing to build, one of which is Sunrise on 63rd Street in Willowbrook, and the other is the Birches on 55th in Clarendon Hills. As we discussed in the last meeting, both of those facilities, let me see, we did discuss the issue that really comes up between assisted living and skilled nursing is that there's a much higher number of staff at skilled nursing facilities as compared to assisted living, and that this might explain some of the issues that the village has been having with the 3 skilled nursing facilities in the community. As we discussed, these are not the 3. These are examples based on other facilities within the Chicago area and are representative of the staffing that you would see at skilled nursing. We did provide last time and also to, in the zoning process, a comparison of this facility with the other assisted living facilities that we operate in the Chicago area, both from a parking and from a size standpoint, and also a comparison with the two other facilities that are local, Sunrise and Willowbrook, both of which are of similar size to our property and have a little bit less parking than what we're proposing for our facility. We also tried to discuss the fact that there is a project that is currently zoned for this, and so we wanted to compare how we stack up against what could be built under the current zoning or what's under the planned development. One of the main issues that came up in other discussions is potential traffic congestion that we would create. So we had the benefit, and I want to thank the developer, Bella Reeve, who gave us their traffic study. The benefit of their traffic study that was done by a third party, happened to be the same third party that did our traffic study, and comparing the two facilities. As it turned out, and I have to admit this was a little bit of a surprise to myself too, our peak traffic generation is slightly less than the 36 townhomes that are currently approved for that location. We also looked at our building massing compared to the townhomes. This is the site plan of the facility as we were proposing. This is a 3D view of how the building relates to 63rd Street, and you can see as we brought it down, we have two wings that do approach the homes to our east and south, and we've brought the scale down to 1 story on those two wings, as well as the far western wing. We've brought that down to 1 story to reduce the massing as the building approaches the neighbors. This is in comparison to the townhomes as they are currently designed and currently zoned. Just another view of how our building would relate. Again, we took advantage. We were cheating a little bit in that we have a transparent fence here. We would have an opaque fence plus landscaping. This at least helps you see the two properties. This would be the massing from the same location of the townhomes. Very briefly, we did discuss impervious surface, stormwater runoff, because those were certainly one of the main issues that was discussed. As we found, from an engineering standpoint, our impervious surface as of last meeting was not quite as good as what was originally in the Bella Reeve proposal. However, it was well within the requirements of DuPage County and the capacity in muddy waters. So that was as we proposed it, as we've been proposing it, and as where we were last month. The suggestion was made in the intervening weeks that we consider permeable pavers for our main parking lot and drive. And I have to admit, I was skeptical. We've had, there have been concerns about maintenance of permeable pavers. I think there's a lot of things that have been involved in green construction over the years. As it's become more accepted, the vendors have become more comfortable with it. After talking with our vendors and operations, we've been able to say, yeah, we can do this. So we made the change from asphalt to permeable pavers in the front part, in the main parking lot, and the result of that was our pervious versus impervious. There we go, just a quick table. Where Bella Reeve was 63% impervious, where we were proposing it last month, we were 69% impervious, so not quite as good. Using kind of the village's calculations that permeable really kind of counts as 50% pervious versus impervious, we're now at effectively at 59% impervious. So we were not quite as good last time, we're slightly better now. So in summary, the points we're trying to make is the parking that we've provided for this facility exceed what's required, both based on our experience and on the experience of 2 other facilities that have been in this area for over 10 years. The traffic that we will generate, our peak traffic, will be less than what the townhomes of that project were executed that's currently zoned. This is a subjective statement. Our feeling is we've reduced our massing as it approaches the neighbors, and that By keeping our massing to the north, we actually have less impact from a massing standpoint to our neighbors to the south. I think Josh's letter is indicative of that change. He did ask that we add some landscaping and also sound attenuation around our generator. We're certainly open to that. The landscaping as it currently is envisioned, we have 12-foot arborvitae going around the perimeter of the property, so that should be pretty good, but we're certainly open to options of adding. We already have sound attenuation around our generator. We've just never gotten into that level of detail in the discussions. The IEPA requires us to have sound attenuation around the generator, so it is in our plans. It also is important to note that that generator is only an emergency generator, so it only comes on if the power goes out or if we test it. We test once a month, and we usually coordinate our testing around the air raid sirens. And it's really a 2-minute turn it on, turn it off to make sure the thing works. So the generator, by and large, is not running. And then finally, and I'd like to have Dave Schindel kind of give the real technical explanation of this. We, by having less permeable surface, by adding the rain gardens, all of that, we are well under the requirements and the capacity of Muddy Waters. And you want to summarize what Kim said or Jill said?
You know, Bob really did say it, but there are a couple of points that come out of Bob's program. With the proposed development now incorporating permeable pavers in the entire north lot, as Bob depicted, the resulting relative impervious ratio is reduced to the point where two things occur. That permeable paver lot is now going to provide additional water volume reduction, best management practice, and an infiltration and water quality to the point where this project will now provide approximately 2.5 times the volume reduction, best management practice that the site will require. But the other side effect of providing those permeable pavers is that because the relative pervious ratio of this proposed development is now less than the previously proposed townhome development, the runoff from this site, the volume of water runoff from this site will actually be less than the previously proposed townhome development. I think those are the couple points that we'd like to add.
I'm sure there'll be some public comment, and we are here to entertain your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd open the floor for public comment. I ask that there's no numbers, so you can start walking up one at whoever wants to. The only thing we ask is you go to the podium, you state your name and address, where you reside.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Edward Richard. I live at 1419 Wesley Court, Westmont. To be quite frank with you, I'm going to ask you to deny this request. As the staff has told you, the Plan Commission unanimously turned this down after 2 quite extensive meetings. And I happened to sit on those meetings, so one of our concerns was the lot coverage. Most everything on this is, when it was shown to us, was to be impervious and either a building. So that we had a great concern on. We also had a large concern stemming from that with stormwater coverage. Now, I see they have made some changes on there alluding to the development that's been made in Muddy Waters Park for the dry retention basins. We have been faced with overrunning water on 63rd Street innumerable times. When we had the big heavy rains this past early fall, I think it was, we had, I'd say about a foot of water at the worst, flowing from Muddy Waters Park to the north. And I believe that this can only exacerbate this. They claim that the dry retention basins are more than adequate, but if they are more than adequate, I would ask this: why is there an overflow into our wet basin to the east? Traffic. I've lived in this area for 35 years. One of our big concerns is traffic on 63rd Street during the rush hour. Anybody attempting to exit from Virginia, which is from our development, and to head west on 63rd Street, faces an innumerable oncoming vehicles as they crest the hill. It's the apex of the hill, which is where their main entrance exit will be. Virginia Drive is down from there, and across from it is, as it goes into where the other development is, changes the name. I think it's Florence, if I'm not mistaken. But anyhow, you never know when you're attempting to make a left turn if you're going to be hit with oncoming traffic coming from the west as it crests the hill. Next, I would ask, what benefit does Westmont reap from granting this development to these gentlemen? We have 3, if not 4, nursing facilities in this area that are adding to their populations and their construction as we go, especially the one at 65th and Cass. We, on the Planning Commission, thought that, yes, this would be a good fit for Westmont, this facility, but we did not think that it would fit in this location. To be quite honest with you, I would think this would fit much better at 65th and Cass Avenue, where we have on the west side of the street where we have the recently cleared 2 lots. Immediately across from the existing nursing home. One of the things I showed you is the houses that live to the south and the impact that they would have. Their drawings don't show you the topographicals. Where their building is going to be located on the crest of the hill. But as you walk about 150 to 200 foot south over to the backyard of these homes, you are 20 feet down at the very least from their ground level. Once they put a 2-story home up, once they put their 2-story facility up there with everybody with the ability to look out the back windows and into these people's backyards, their privacy is going to be greatly impacted. So that was another problem we had with that. One other thing we were concerned with was snow removal. If you look, I don't have, could you call up, please, the site plan, if you would?
Leave another one up.
There, right there. That'd be fine. Thank you very much. If you look at this site plan, one great concern we had was snow storage. If this parking lot in the front, if you would look, how did,
You lost it.
you have to, I didn't touch it.
I know.
What happened? No signal.
On my normal laptop.
But if you look, whoops, this snow removal here, about the only place you can do it is push it this way or push it this way. There's no other place to put this snow. These areas right now are ingress and egress for the fire departments. They are a semi-paved area.
Ed, you need the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to show you. So you understand where if you were to push this snow to the west on the parking lot or to the south on the parking lot, you're going to be filling up this ingress and egress for the fire department to the back end of the building, if, God forbid, they ever have to go there. And if we have another winter like we did last year, I just don't see where they would put any of their snow. And that pretty well covers.
Thank
Again,
you.
I would ask you that please give this a very serious consideration. We on the Plan Commission did not think it was a good fit at this location. We had no trouble with the concept. It was just this was not the location for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm still open for the public, and then after everybody, I close the public part of the comments, I'll ask the developer to respond to any of them.
Good evening. My name is Hassan Al-Khatib. I live at 616 Nelson Lane. I want to thank you very much for hearing us. I want to be brief. I cannot thank the commission, planning commission, members, and the chairman, who was very eloquent in presenting our case, which I want to thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that very much. I don't want it to be redundant, but the residents generally sign a petition, which you already have, rejecting this development and rejecting the zoning change. And of course, the problem, which is the chairman just mentioned, the traffic and the flood and the also ambulances coming maybe 24/7, generator noise, the privacy of our privacy. And also he mentioned, as you know, the other assistant livings, they are not very full, and he suggested other location for it. And briefly, I wanted to thank you again and thank the commission and the chairman, and you are our representatives, and I trust you're going to have our interest and our wishes at heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, just come to the podium, state your name and address, please.
My name is Bassam Shaheen. I live on 508 Nelson Lane in Westmont. I have been living in Westmont for the last 32 years. I thought it'll be from the best thing they pull out from that project because but everybody is against it beside that flood waters, the safety. My dad got hit on that street over there where I asked the DuPage County to try to put a light. I worked hard, kept working because it's really dangerous with the situation right now. The flood is tremendous. The safety is bad. A lot of time I want to get on 63rd, I go south and come back on Fairview to be able to exit. And imagine now we're going to have 110 units in that small piece of property. I think all they're looking, they want to make a quick bucks. It just, at least somebody need to listen to the people of the neighborhood. And I hope everybody do whatever you think is right for the village and for the people of Westmont. Thank you much.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Nelson. I live at 1239 Virginia Drive. I've lived there for the last 18 years, so I've seen the developments up in Nelson Circle, and quite frankly, when they made the townhome proposal to do this, I wasn't too keen on that. But looking at the alternatives that we had, you would have had a bunch of vacant homes in a spot that wouldn't necessarily have been conducive to, what you really wanted. So when the townhomes came in, thought that was the best, lesser of any of the other evils that could have come through here. And I appreciate that these guys have worked very hard to address some of our concerns about traffic and flooding. And if I had 6 months to continue to revise based on all these things, I could also do that. But quite frankly, we don't want it at that location. The zoning board has said no, and they have suggested other alternative areas for that to happen. So I kind of just wanted to say that that's kind of the bottom line of the way the people in that area feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Again, I think we had the comment, I also received an email from one of the residents, I think there's two that are no longer opposing it. So we did have a couple that have kind of indicated to us just the opposite. So I asked the developer, I'll close the public part of it. If you want to respond just to any of the comments and concerns that may have been raised.
Thank you. Very briefly, I think we tried to address lot coverage, stormwater, and traffic in the original presentation. If there is a development that's already approved for this site, we've tried to compare where we are relative to what is already approved, and I think we've tried to demonstrate that we are have less of an impact on the community than the townhomes that would be approved under the current zoning. Mr. Nahif, I apologize if I'm butchering the pronunciation, mentioned ambulances 24/7. We have agreements with private ambulance services. Again, we've been doing this for a long time. We have agreements with private ambulance services. They do not use sirens either approaching or leaving our buildings. We've checked with our other facilities. We have about a 911 call roughly twice a month. So there's a very low number. Again, Mr. Richard compared us to the nursing homes that are in the community, which we're trying to explain. An assisted living facility and a nursing home are really two very different things. And I would like to explain, Mr. Shana used the phrase quick buck. Pathway Senior Living owns, operates, and develops, and in that order. So we are here for the full life of this project. We still operate our first building that we opened over 17 years ago. So thank you very much.
Can I comment on the one thing I'm curious on, the 20 feet? The comment was made, there's a...
Actually, the slope, do we want, you guys.
And the only other thing, when you mentioned the 911 calls, but there is a lot of non-911 calls coming and going from hospitals and stuff, that those ambulances will be going to your facility, so.
The total site drop-off from the very front at the northwest all the way down to the extreme southeast corner, there is about 10 feet of total drop-off. We are going to be leveling out the site somewhat on there, and the back end of our building, we are showing extra foundation below. So the height of the building on the back of the building, how do I say this? The building itself is actually a little bit taller because of that, and that does accurately show on the elevations that we have here.
Okay.
So that's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I don't know
Okay,
if there are any
thank you.
questions.
Trustees, any questions?
You've got an aging
Comments?
population. You've got a TIF district in that area. My concern is what happens in the future when that TIF district starts going and property values start going up if that land doesn't get developed and it's too expensive to put residential on it? Because all you're going to be able to do is townhomes if you do that. Then that property sits there, and then you have developers coming to buy that to put commercial instead, of which this board isn't sitting here, and so we don't know what happens in the future. And the only thing they can do with it at that point is either leave it vacant, come to a board and ask for a change in zoning to go commercial, because it's the only thing viable left down there. And at that point, would you have been better off having what you got now, or a board who decides the money's more important? And if the way the state is, we all can't guarantee what that's going to be like in the future, when sales tax are going to be absolutely necessary to continue communities. With that being said, is this the best use for that property? Or we'd rather have the townhomes down there. I mean, it's just now you've got people that are spending in the community. But you're on 63rd Street, which is a business corridor. And if you think it's busy now, wait till that all gets developed, which we know it's going to get developed. I'm not saying that property, I'm saying across the street. You've got Mariano's, which will have parking for 500 cars and 400 employees will be in and out of there. Then you've got 63rd and Cass, that shopping center, which will eventually get redeveloped. I understand it's adding more, but I'm just trying to figure out is that property could very well just sit empty because it's too expensive to build anything but commercial on it at that point. And taking that into consideration, that's all. We're just trying to figure out ideas before we make this, make our decision. But we've got to consider not only today and next year, but we have to consider in the future. It's a 23-year deal in the TIF district. So that's not one way or the other. I'm just trying to point out.
Other comments?
No, I've got a couple of questions here. You know, we've discussed this before, and it's my understanding from the information I received in the past that the water flowing over 63rd Street farther down towards Thornton's there and Muddy Waters is not related to this. That's going to occur anytime there's a heavy rain because it's part of a larger system. So that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I heard. The other thing that the point that Ed made, a couple of points about the crest of the hill, in thinking about that, as I see it, whether it's, assisted living or it's condos, it's still, the elevation issues are the same. That way, and then the thing that concerns, there's two things that concern me out of the whole thing is one, to make sure that those fire lanes were open for the fire to get through, and snow is an issue there. And the other one is to make sure that we don't have, which there's indication that we might have an issue with the crest of the hill on Virginia Street as they exit there. But as far as increased traffic, I'm trying to get out onto 55th Street and turn west, and there's times of the day I won't do that, just because you can't do it. And I know 63rd Street is much busier than 55th Street, and, the traffic on those streets, I don't feel that we have any control over that, so.
Thank you. Any other? Of course, I have a
Trustee
comment.
Sure. A couple of things that were brought up and just like to comment on. I believe the presentation that the village board has witnessed and seen now twice is much different than what the building and zoning had. And I think that their concerns were answered through the developers, really second to none that I've seen in my experience as far as what they've done. To the snow removal, that's been a concern of mine. I've talked with them in heavy snows. I believe that they would talk about carting out. Switching to the permeable pavers, as we've seen in our own presentations, can handle almost up to 2 inches of snow and be allowed to melt through. So that's a really big plus to see that switched. And I don't even think that was one of our strict demands. So that was a positive. I heard the comment from somebody that there would be no benefit to the village. I don't agree with that. I believe any time that there's a development in the village, there is a great benefit. We see developers purchase fuel, the contractors go to lunch, those employees will visit our restaurants and shops, we'll have overall activity. I believe building activity breeds further activity. I believe it's right for the village. I believe it's right for that area. And I think it goes along with the further development of 63rd Street. And I also agree with Trustee Barker that those elevations are going to be there no matter what type of development would go in there. And those are going to be the concerns for anything. That's what I have this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Trustee Barker.
I'm sorry, I got one more. I'm interested to know if anybody that testified tonight as a resident, if they lived immediately behind this proposed facility, right up next to what would be the back fence line there.
I live in back.
Directly behind there?
Your backyard would back up to that?
Could you show me which one would be your unit, sir, please?
Well, actually, because I don't see all the pictures, I would believe probably right in here.
That's your home?
Yeah. right, I live 508 Nelson Lane, right, one house before get to the circle.
Okay. You would be right here. So you'd actually benefit probably the most.
Benefits. That's the most horrible thing I've seen.
You know,
Well, you will have one or two not.
You know, a lot of.
Trustee,
You don't have money.
Wait, Mayor, I just got a couple things to say. You know, a lot of good points were raised, and I don't think there's a reason to repeat them. The one thing I just want to touch on is stormwater. I spent a lot of time speaking with Bob as well as with our engineer, Kim Nickel, on this. And, you know, I have a personal interest as well because the creek runs through my backyard. And of course, I'd be really concerned, or not in my current house, but the home I lived in for about 7 years. And I know that area real well. I've seen Muddy Waters Pond spill over on 63rd Street. I've seen the retention ponds be overflowed. And of course, it was an initial question of mine is this going to make things worse? And, you know, quite frankly, I thought it would. I said, well, should we require them to have more detention? Should we require them to do this? What should we be doing? Is it the right thing? Talked with Kim. Muddy Waters is always going to spill over to 63rd unless we build a bridge over it. That's how it's designed. It's not going to make things worse. I think we've heard it's going to improve things. The developers were kind enough to take my suggestion of installing permeable pavers. I think those extra steps, spending the 1.5 times the cost to do that kind of stuff, shows what kind of developers these are. I have no problems with them working in our town. I'm thankful they're here. I think this is going to be a good addition to the area. I don't think stormwater is going to be affected at all, and if anybody would be the one that'd be worried about it, it's me. I really, I feel that, you know, it's going to do nothing but improve the area. I have no issue with it, with stormwater at all. I think the system we have can hold it, can really do it. It's, you know, it's on. A lot, like Harold said, a lot has changed from when planning and zoning saw it to what we see now. I've watched the videos, and, you know, again, I'm in support of it. I think it's a good addition to the area. Traffic we already discussed. That's, you know, kind of, when Mariano's comes, that's going to be a whole different world. So it's, traffic is good on 63rd. We need businesses there. The more people that are there, the more business that are going to thrive. So just wanted to touch on stormwater. I've seen everything there for the past 7 years with stormwater related. It's gotten better in that area. Everything, these first 4 years I've been on the board, we've improved that area with stormwater, believe it or not. We've cleaned out the creek. We got a stream bank stabilization program going in. We're installing permeable pavers on Cumner. There's a lot of things going on. It's improving. I think this is going to do the same thing. That's all I have. Thank you.
I agree. When I think back to August, when this first came before the Economic Development Committee, it was a very different plan. I was a little bit on the fence then. When I look at this and I, you know, allude to Trustee Scott's comments, you know, it's an aging community. We have nothing like this in Westmont. The closest we have to a facility like this would be Cordia on the north end of town. I believe, you know, you've jumped through hoops to make this work for Westmont. I place my trust 100% in our professionals. You know, we've looked at our professionals have looked at stormwater. I'm certainly not a stormwater expert. I'll go as far as to say no one on this board probably is. Oh yeah, you probably are. For sure he is. Sorry, I take it back. I think this could be good for Westmont. It scares me to think what could happen as, again, Trustee Scott alluded to. This is a TIF. Things are going to start booming. Things are going to build. There's going to be more traffic on 63rd than ever before. A future board at some point could say, I'd love to see a strip mall there. Let's put a strip mall there. It could happen. Zoning changes. I think this is the highest and best use for that property. I'm in full support. I like it a lot.
Can I ask Chief Weiss? I mean, there's been a lot of the comment about the safety aspect with the snow and the fire lanes. I'd like to get your comment on it.
Yeah, we, you know, thanks, Mayor, for asking about that. We will monitor that during the winter months and stuff, and we will make sure that it's kept open for our emergency vehicles at all times. The inspectors are out, they inspect those emergency access around those type of buildings, especially assisted living and the nursing homes. So, as you know, we had some, egress, problems on Burgess there, and we were able to take care of that and remedy that situation. So if we do end up having a situation, we will address it immediately.
Okay. All right, thank you. Last thing is, as it stands right now with the zoning, what could go in there without any additional? I'll ask the attorney.
Well, it's an R4 PUD, so it's a Plan Development Overlay District, which was approved specifically for that multifamily project, and that's what could go in there. If the currently approved multifamily were to never come to fruition, another developer could, again, seek approval for a multifamily project with height up to 35 feet, as close to the setbacks as they could get.
Okay. I was just.
Could it ever go commercial?
Absolutely. Zoning can always change. I'm not sure. Currently, it
No, but in the future, it could revert, or go back to, yeah.
Very good. And the only other item would be that there is going to be an additional stoplight on 63rd. It'll be further down. It'll be by Mariano's, and they're going to expand the lanes at that point to have a turning lane too. But that's further down the street that's going east.
We don't. No, but it's a testament to, it's a DuPage County highway. So that's what was required based on the impact that development was going to have on the road per the county standards, and they don't have that concern here.
Right now. Good.
We don't have any history of traffic accidents there at Virginia and 63rd Street.
Yes.
Trustee Barker, I don't have the exact numbers, but yes, there are accidents there, mainly because there is no left turn lane. Cars to make a left turn are turning left in a straight through or a regular traffic lane, as you would any other place where there's no left turn lane. So we do have accidents, rear-ending, and there are some angle accidents that way. How many, I don't know.
Well, it's not an alarming rate of.
I can say they occur. I maybe ask the residents if they know better, but I would say I couldn't give you an estimate. I couldn't say once a month or so, but I do know there are accidents at that location.
Thank you.
Mayor, one last quick thing is we received an email from our engineer, Kim Nickel, and I know it kind of agrees with what the developer said, but it's always nice to hear from a third party, our engineer. Maybe, I don't want to put her on the spot, but maybe if we could just, just because it confirms what they're presenting, and I think to hear it from our own staff, our own professional, if she's not willing to come on up, I'm happy to read it. But it really, it specifically says, what I was kind of trying to convey. I'm not an engineer, but I think it really, puts at ease the stormwater issue. And I don't know if, Kim, you want me just to read it?
Here she comes.
A little more technical.
Yeah, I did check the calculations for the revised site plans with the permeable paver parking lot. And with permeable pavers, now they're having, down at Muddy Waters Detention Pond, there's 1.5 times more detention there than is required. So it wouldn't even be overtopping in a 100-year storm. So it would just be going out of the restrictor for the most part. And also for the volume control best management practice, they're providing 2 to 3 times more of what the requirement is. And that's, again, because of the permeable paver parking lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, now, might as well get all the staff's comments.
I just wanted to respond to the accident question. I found the accident report that Chief Mulhern had sent, and there were 5 traffic accidents between August 13th or August of 2013 and August of 2014, and 3 were rear end accidents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments from the board? If not, we need a motion on each item. I'll let you. Come on up.
My question is how long has this area been a TIF district? This region along 63rd been a TIF district? Because I've been here for 18 years. I know when Zare left that shopping mart where the Westbrook Market is, that was about 1990. So for the last quarter of a century, that's been kind of a transient area in terms of development. The strip mall that is directly to the north of that on Cass Avenue is empty as well. And it's my opinion, and I know you guys disagree or you wouldn't have put Mariano's in there, that Westbrook Market will then fold when Mariano's comes, okay? But the question is how long has it been a TIF district? Because that area has not only not been developed, it's actually gone down over the past.
You're absolutely right. We couldn't agree with you more. The TIF district's been relatively about a year.
Okay.
Maybe?
Or two, maybe a little longer.
18 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason we made it a TIF district is just what you just said. And our hope is that Mariano stimulates the development, that shopping center, that the strip mall, all gets developed. And I know Larry Forsberg, who's our economic development director, is receiving a lot of inquiries from businesses for that area now. Mariano's stimulated that. And without the TIF district, we wouldn't have Mariano's coming in, so.
Absolutely.
And if I could just further comment that Westbrook had those same concerns when Aldi opened, that they would no longer make it. And I think Aldi's been open maybe 4 or 5 years now, and I think both businesses are doing well. So competition is going to always be there.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, we hope
This
they
is just a little
both-
more direct. This is
Yeah.
just a little more.
But I think we're looking at two different types of stores, too.
Yeah. We're hoping they both stay in business and do real well.
And one last thing, too, a TIF district's in place for about 20 years, so we can't expect it overnight, but that's the tool we need, and
I think his
it's
point was,
going.
if it was in 10 years, nothing's happened, but it has only been a short time, and I think something is happening.
Things are
So
starting.
we're kind of excited about that.
Very.
So, need a motion on the first one, which is the map amendment, request to rezone the property at 407 West 63rd Street, 309 West 63rd Street, and 311 West 63rd Street from R4 PD General Residence District Plan Development to R6 Special Resident District.
Motion to approve, Barry.
Second, Scott.
Motion made and second to approve as read. Any questions from the board? Roll call, please.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
No, and I'm going to explain why. Because I'm going to look at it from the financial issue for the future of this community and what we have the issues with the state. And I'll roll the gamble that it ends up going commercial because the property value is going to go too high, and just for the sales tax dollars we'll get out of it, I would rather see that there instead. So I say no.
Rather see stores and things.
Yep.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance passed. Second one is site and landscaping plan approval to build an assisted living facility.
Motion to approve Barker.
Second, Scott.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve as presented. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
No.
That ordinance passed. Number 3, preliminary plat of subdivision. I need an ordinance. I'm any motion to approve.
So move, Nero.
Second, Seneca?
Made and seconded to approve. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
No.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Need another motion on ordinance zoning code variance request to reduce the required front yard setback in an R6 special resident district for the purpose of constructing parking within the setback.
Motion to approve Barker.
Second, Seneca?
Question to the board? Roll call, please.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
No.
I also need a motion to approve ordinance, a request for a zoning code variance request for the relief from the maximum allowable density in an R6 special residence district.
So moved, Seneca.
Second, Nero.
Motion been made and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
No.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Again, guys, welcome to Westmont. You just approved, and we look forward to the same sort of cooperation you've been exhibiting the past several months by working with the residents and the village and the staff. I think it's evident that you are willing to give compromises, so,
Thank you very much. We will do our best to earn your confidence.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is standing, I didn't miss any, committees of the board. Board to consider an ordinance to name the following as the standing committees of the board: Public Information, Public Safety, Administration and Human Resources, Public Works and Engineering, Community Development, Finance, and Economic Development. Manager May.
These standing committees of the board are, there's two slight changes here, not slight, but two changes here. One being the actual composition of the boards and what they are. We talked about the building, zoning, and code enforcement being combined, and the administration and finance being separated. So the quantity of committees are the same. The structure is different. There's also a two-year rotation for each committee, where different trustees assigned by the mayor will chair each of the respective committees, so that rotation is also due. And we need to publish all of the meeting dates for 2015 before the end of the year, and this is the last opportunity to adopt that. So before you, you have in the press release form, the committees of the board with the dates. You have a little spreadsheet showing how they've met historically and what dates they have met, and the proposed dates, as well as the section of the code already spelled out with the definitions of all the codes and their separate missions.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved, Scott.
Second, Barker.
Made. Second to approve as presented. Any questions from? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
All right, moving on to new business. Before we do the first one, item C, the presentation on stormwater. We're going to move that to the end of new business. So Larry, you moved up there, you can move back, but we're going to have that at the end, because that will end the meeting. That's a 15, 20-minute presentation, and those who have business before, we'd like to let them conduct their business, and if they need to leave, they can leave. But A is property tax levy. The board to approve an ordinance adopting the 2014 tax levy ordinance in the amount of $8,265,332. And I'm asking Finance Director Parker to please come to the podium.
So not much has changed with this in the last few minutes. Pretty much the same numbers as was presented previously, but this is the next step in the process where the board will actually approve the levy, and then the next step is that we'll file it with the county, and then in March, we'll be able to receive from the county the information as to what the actual tax rates will be and how much we'll actually be receiving. At that point, if the board does decide they want to make any changes, they do have the ability to change to request fewer dollars. So the library director, Julia Cohen's also here in case you have any questions about the library levy. That's open for questions from the board at this point.
Just to be clear, when you say pretty much the same as during the public hearing, they're exactly
the same. Yes.
Point of clarification.
That's correct, thank you. Exactly the same.
It's exactly the same.
Yes.
Do I have a motion adopting the 2014 tax levy ordinance?
Motion approved, Scott.
Second, Nero.
Motion made and second to approve. On the question, anybody from the audience have a question? Board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
All right, moving on. Abatement of taxes. Board to approve an ordinance abating the taxes heretofore levied for the year 2014 to pay debt service and the general obligation bonds, the alternate revenue source, Series 2013A, and its general obligation bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2013B, of the Village of Westmont, DuPage County, Illinois. Financial Director Parker.
So as you'll recall, so last year, the board adopted a couple of bonds, issued bonds to do some street resurfacing as well as for other infrastructure, which is currently been used primarily for stormwater infrastructure improvements. And that was done as what's called an alternate revenue bond, so that we're able to get a better interest rate. Technically, what happens is we pledge these revenues, the motor fuel tax, the places for eating tax, and utility taxes, and say this is how we're going to pay for the bond. But to be able to get the better interest rate, we also say, and if we don't have that money that comes in, it'll go on the property taxes. And so what we're doing at this point is officially saying we have the money, and so it doesn't need to go on the property taxes. And it's just merely a housekeeping issue to continue to pay for the bonds as we planned to pay for them last year.
And again, we used that method to get a better interest rate at the time.
Yep.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve, Scott?
Second, Nero.
Motion made and seconded to approve the abatement of taxes. On the question, anybody in the audience? Board, no. Roll call, please.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
We are going to hold new business C till the end of new business. We'll go to D, 340 South Grant Street, Mikasich fence variance. Hope I said that right. Board to consider an ordinance approving a zoning code variance request from Laura and Gary Mikasich to allow a 6-foot solid fence in the side yard adjoining the street in the R3 Single Family Residential District. Acting Community Development Director Ziegler.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicants have a corner lot on 55th Street, and they're asking for a fence variance for additional privacy and security. The code requires that 6-foot solid fences be set back 15 feet from the property line, and they would like to install the fence at the property line. You can see on their plat of survey that this is where they would be required to put the fence if they met the setback, and this is where they would like to put the fence along 55th Street. It would be set back far enough from the corner and alley to avoid line of sight issues, and it would provide the homeowners the ability to fence more of their backyard. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-2 in favor of the 6-foot high fence in the setback, with a recommendation to trim shrubs closer to the alley for better line of sight. A couple of the staff members have gone out there and checked it out, and it would be improved with the trim shrubs. There was also another motion for a 4-foot high fence in the setback with a 5-1 vote. And the homeowner's available if there's any questions, and I'm available for any questions.
Am I to understand that the fence that's going to run north and south is also going to be 6 feet?
The one along.
Correct.
Yes. Mhm.
And that's the alley there on the 55th,
So the
obviously.
alley is here, and then her driveway is there.
And they feel that that is not a block of the sight line of 55th?
It's set back enough along 55th Street for the alley. The issue is the shrubs that grow up far enough, because when you pull out from the alley, you can see it along 55th.
Joe, I know there's fences like that along 55th Street already.
Mhm.
And personally, I don't like the fence right up against the sidewalk. Is this an either or? Either it goes where it's supposed to, or it goes right up against the sidewalk?
Yeah, they would need to bring the fence down to a 30-inch height to be solid along the property line, or if they want to go to 4 or 6 feet high, they would need to go 15 feet back.
So they could do it.
There's no 2-foot setback or
Right, that's what I'm looking for. Is there a,
Because I agree with what Trustee Barker was saying. When you put that fence right on the sidewalk on 55th, you have busy traffic here, and then there's just no room for.
First of all, is there a sidewalk there?
Yeah.
Okay.
On
So
that side.
And it's okay.
we wouldn't mind setting it back like a couple feet off the sidewalk, except for there's probably 50-year-old trees there and the fence would kind of go right through the middle of them if we popped it back.
Can you get it back any distance at all? You know, I agree that you need a fence. I agree that you need a
Yeah,
fence, but
I mean, we don't mind doing it, I just don't know where.
I certainly wouldn't take a
Posts
tree
can go.
down for it.
Yeah.
Well, if you set it back, then you've got the issue of the landscaping there. You know, you might have
Yeah.
a piece, you know,
2 feet of grass you got to cut
you
down
got to
there.
run back there
around
and,
and
But you got to cut the parkway too, right?
Yeah,
right.
it's really more an issue of.
Well, you don't have to.
And it's almost kind of like the Oakwood fence.
I was thinking that on Ogden.
You know,
It's right there.
let's face it, and every time they do any kind of expansion, you know how the county is when they go through and do the roads like that, it's never in the betterment of the residents who live alongside of it. We've just seen that. So they're kind of, I know they bought where they bought, but they're also kind of stuck with whatever development that comes along with that and expansion, and I've got no problem with it, because I tell you what, I wouldn't want to see the street and all the traffic that goes by there
Yeah,
and
no,
everything
that's
else. I mean,
exactly
for that
what I
end of
meant.
it, it's,
And if the sight line's okay coming out of the alley, if that's what they're saying, then that would be my only concern, so.
Do we have a motion to approve the variance request?
Motion.
Seneca?
second, Scott.
Motion made and second to approve as presented. Anybody in the audience have a comment or question? Any additional comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Passed. Put your fence up. There you go.
We'll get a permit.
We gotta get a permit. Get a
I'll get
permit.
your permit.
I don't believe I said that without saying it. 115 East Ogden Avenue, EFN Westmont Property LLC. Board to consider ordinances approving the following requests from EFN Westmont Property LLC regarding the property located at 115 East Ogden Avenue in the B2 General Business District. 1, special use permit request to construct a parking lot with an allowance for a temporary gravel parking lot during the winter season. 2, site and landscaping plan approval to construct a parking lot on a site with an existing non-conforming building with non-conforming setbacks and screening. 3, parking lot landscaping waiver. 4, partial stormwater detention waiver. And 5, aisle width waiver. Acting Community Director Ziegler.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant is requesting approval to remove the existing motel building and the building to the rear to provide off-site employee and inventory parking for the existing Porsche dealership at 201 East Ogden. The lot will alleviate previous street parking complaints on Wilmette that the board is very familiar with. The site plan was revised in response to Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations. There was a lot of discussion that night regarding the accessory building in the back and lighting and snow removal. Since that conversation, the accessory building will be removed in the rear. A privacy fence was continued in the rear at 6 feet to separate the single family behind the existing building. And lighting and snow removal has been noted, and a depressional area has been added in the rear to alleviate some concerns from engineering. The commission recommended unanimous approval with several conditions to be noted as part of the ordinance, including building demolition or security in the rear of the lot, a sunset clause, marked employee parking, stormwater, and stormwater review.
Thank you. Is anybody from the audience? Comments, petitioner? Seeing none, we need, as the attorney just advised me, 3 separate motions or ordinances. The first 2 I read are individual. The last 3 are all combined into one.
Have discussion now, then?
If we can have discussion now, yes.
Jill, when you say a sunset clause, I'm sorry, I just got back there.
So the sunset clause was recommended just so that there isn't a parking lot sitting there for 10 years.
And that was my question, when we say a temporary, is there a certain date that we're putting on that, or a certain time limit?
That was up for discussion. The applicant is here if you'd like to recommend, a certain time period.
So John, we would want to,
Yes, it's a special use, so you can impose a reasonable special condition In general, I'm not in favor of sunset clauses or expiration clauses except in unique circumstances. Planning and zoning felt this was a bit of a unique circumstance in that they're temporarily storing inventory and employee parking and hoping to acquire additional property and expand their dealership. So I think this was viewed by the applicant as a short-term solution. I think planning and zoning felt, if that's the case, put a term of years on it by which this has to be converted to some other productive type use. But it's just a recommendation.
Again, we have the petitioner who'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, I'm Rick Branstetter, the Director of Real Estate for the Napleton Auto Group, which owns the Porsche store. And for the last 8 years, we've been working with the village to try to expand that specific facility. It's landlocked to the east by the Lamborghini store, which is today a used car facility for the Lincoln Mercury store further west. Obviously, it's up against a street, and then there is a rather old facility between this parking lot and that. We've been unable to acquire any of that additional property. I think the village is pretty aware that we've been aggressive in attempting to purchase that, but we've been unsuccessful thus far. We certainly hope to acquire some or both of those properties in the future and would help alleviate this further. If that were to occur, we probably will make this a much larger project and alleviate a lot of other problems that occur. Specifically, I think I was here in June or July fielding a lot of resident concerns about parking on the streets, and this was an alternative that we came up with. I'd hate to put a fixed time on it because we don't know it's taken us 8 years to get this one lot, and we'd like to get more. I think 10 years is reasonable if that means we have to come back and reapply. If I could solve this problem this year, I would, and I don't have much time left to do it this year. So a 10-year time frame would be probably a reasonable thing, and then we'd have to come back and reapply if we haven't been able to solve that problem by now.
Yeah, well, and we know how difficult it's been just to negotiate to try to acquire the property you acquired, the old motel. Any comments, questions?
I don't think it's a no-lose for the village, just because we know what their game plan is. We know where they want to go. It's a time issue. And even if, God forbid, they can't make that work, and they decide to pull out and have to go somewhere else because Porsche tells them they have to because they don't have enough parking and enough, that property's still on Ogden Avenue.
It's going to go.
Somebody's going to buy it.
Yeah.
So I have no issue with that.
Yeah, I think 10 years, John, I know you don't like it, but 10 years seem where they have to come back and.
Or should they come back every year or every 2 years to let the village know how things are going? I mean, we'll already know that anyhow, but.
Bob, I love you, but I really don't want to see you every year.
That was supposed to be between us.
After May, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think 10 years or something a little less than that would be certainly reasonable and fair to the applicant, give the village some level of protection where if something's not happening by then, you'd have the right to say that special use terminates. Maybe there's another developer knocking on the door to develop all those properties. And certainly they'd have the right to reapply and get an extension.
I just have a concern because there's so many variances and so many provisions that 10 years does seem like a long time. If other people were to look at it, boy, you really did them a favor. How come I can't have a gravel lot for 10 years to park on and so forth?
Well, let me correct. It's not going to be gravel forever. It's only going to be gravel over the winter because we can't get asphalt.
And that was really where my question was.
Yeah, no, there's actually a storm drain that runs down the center that is being put in where the motel is today, which will connect to the rest of the storm drains that are on the site.
Thank you.
And
That was really my
Gonna
question
clean it up.
on the sunset, is that it wasn't going to stay gravel.
I don't think you'd want to park.
We don't
Porsches
want it
on
to be gravel because
Yeah.
we've got pretty expensive
Harold?
cars on it. So.
I agree with you, but I think their
Yeah.
plan is to asphalt. Any additional comments? And I'm looking for a first Motion to approve an ordinance for special use permit request to construct a parking lot with an allowance for a temporary gravel parking lot during the winter season.
Motion to approve Scott for number 1.
Second, Nero.
Motion been made and seconded to approve 1. On the question, anybody in the audience? Board member?
Again, just to clarify, when we say temporary, we are not really putting a date on that, when that has to be paved?
Springtime.
Given the time of year, there's no physical ability to do constructive improvement.
I understand all that. I
That's all.
just,
And we-
again.
and we want them to
You want it
use
in
the
writing.
property.
Well, I just want to protect ourselves, so if something changes there, that,
Who's definite? I guess if they don't do it in spring and there's something happens, it's 2 years from that. Is that still temporary?
Well,
temporary is very vague.
I know that, I understand.
so Anne Marie drafted the ordinance, kind of tracking the language in the agenda write-up, which says a temporary allowance for gravel parking during the upcoming winter season.
There.
If you'd like more specific, by all means, we can say by June 1st, 2014, or 2015. That would be a
I think
little-
as long as it says winter season, I'm comfortable. Okay.
Yeah, except for it doesn't say upcoming winter
Yeah.
season. That's the only thing. It just says winter season. But as long as you're okay with it, we're okay with it.
Any additional questions? Roll call on the first one, please.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Okay, second ordinance is a site and landscaping plan approval to construct a parking lot on a site with an existing non-conforming building with non-conforming setbacks and screening with a 10-year, I think we're adding,
Oh, I'm sorry, that was on the special use that you
Yeah,
just voted
okay,
on.
we
had
added
the
it.
discussion.
Okay.
You said 10 years, so that's what it'll be.
10 years will
unless
be
we're-
on that one. This one then is just a site and landscaping plan. I need a motion to approve.
So move Seneca?
Second, Barker.
Motion's been made and seconded on the question. Anybody in the audience? Board members, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
And the third motion is for the waivers for parking lot landscaping, partial stormwater detention, and aisle width.
Motion to approve Barker.
Second, Nero.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional comments, questions from anybody? Roll call, please.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Well, all three passed. So, you're welcome to stay for the stormwater.
Or come back next month.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a final plat request, 5703 Fairview Avenue subdivision. Board to consider an ordinance approving a final plat of subdivision request from Paul Swanson to split one lot into 3 lots of record at 5703 Fairview. Community Development Director, Acting Community Development Director Ziegler.
Thank you, Mayor. The 3 lots of record will be used for 3 new single-family homes. The subdivision is located in our R3 single-family district and meets our R3 bulk regulations of the zoning ordinance. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat back in February. The Village Board granted approval of the preliminary plat back in March. Following that, the engineering review has been completed, and staff recommends approval of this final plat.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Approve,
Nero.
Scott. Give it to Steve.
Close.
Are you the
Stephen,
second?
you
I'll
second?
second it.
All right, motion been made and second. On the question,
Jill, was this the same properties that were going to get Downers Grove water?
Yes.
And they did that? Okay. Good, thank you.
any additional questions? Anybody in the audience? If not, I'll ask the clerk for a roll call, please.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was out of my seat. Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
It's been approved. We'll move on to 3500 Midwest Road, AT&T. Board to consider an ordinance approving a zoning code variance from at and T to permit more than 3 antennas on a structure in a B3 Special Development District. Again, Acting Community Development Director Ziegler.
Thank you, Mayor. There are currently approximately 25 antennas on the Hilton roof. Adding any additional antennas triggers this need for a variance, and the total number of antennas will now be 37. A structural engineer has confirmed that the roof and equipment are adequate for supporting the proposed and existing equipment. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval, and a diagram showing the new antennas is before you tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So move, Seneca?
Second, Parker?
Motion made and second to approve as presented. On the question.
How many antennas can they put up there altogether?
What's the limit?
It's going to be a bee habitat when it's all done.
I mean, there's going to have to be a limit eventually. I guess what we need to know is, what is that limit?
An engineer would have to tell you.
I know. I know they're getting lighter and they can get them smaller and all
Right.
that there, but
We require the structural calculations every time, and as you noted, they have become much smaller
Right,
and much
right.
lighter than the previous equipment, so
I would assume we're going to continue seeing these.
we probably will.
Okay.
More requests. Any other questions, comments? Anybody from the audience? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
All right, moving on to agenda item H, NORCOM agreement. Board to consider an ordinance approving an amendment to exclusive license agreement for municipal alarm service with NORCOM Public Safety Communications Incorporated to remove the exclusivity provision. Chief Weiss.
Thanks, Mayor. NORCOM has been the longtime provider of police and fire wireless alarm monitoring equipment and services following all villages ordinances. This time, both parties desire to amend their agreement to remove the exclusivity provision of the agreement. The agreement expires in year 2017 with one-year extension provisions. With this amendment, other companies are free to provide this equipment and service provided they comply with the requirement of the village ordinance. John, anything to add?
There's been some recent case law addressing exclusive fire alarm, wireless fire alarm supervision services such as this in regards to fire protection districts. And we reached out to NORCOM as a result of that case law and said, let's amend the agreement, remove the exclusivity provision. As of now, they're still the only provider of that service that complies with the village ordinance and probably will continue to be the only supplier because of the costs to get the equipment, et cetera. But by removing this, we eliminate potential challenge someone could have on legal grounds, and they were on board with it.
Yeah. And again, staff's recommending it.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So move, Seneca?
Second, Nero.
Motion been made and seconded to approve as presented. Additional questions or comments? Board, audience?
So again, this just leaves us currently that it still is only NORCOM is available here in the village of Westmont. Is that right, Chief?
They are the only player in town right now, but anyone else is welcome to come in. They just need to meet the requirements of the ordinance, have the equipment, et cetera, as NORCOM has done. It's a capital, expenditure for them.
And then this will alleviate the monopoly, is that the fear?
Correct.
That they had somewhat of a monopoly on it?
It opens the door for other businesses to come in.
Yes.
But at that point, they would have to provide the control center if another company was to come in, is that what I'm to understand?
That's correct. At our old dispatch center, 500 North Cass, they would have to supply their control center that would send the wireless to our dispatch center.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Moving on, Fire Department, University of Illinois Agreement. Board to consider an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the University of Illinois to receive $5,000 in training classes for fire department personnel as remuneration for the donation of a former truck 1829, which was declared a surplus on August 7, 2014. Chief Weiss.
Thanks, Mayor. The Village of Westmont declared the fire department's former truck 1829, a 1986 C1 Hurricane, as surplus equipment on August 7, 2014. Said truck was donated to the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute. In return, $5,000 worth of training classes for fire personnel is agreed upon as a form of reputation for former truck 1829. It's a stipulation that training must be completed within a 3-year time frame from the date of the agreement, and staff recommends approval of this agreement.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved, Scott.
Second, Parker.
Motion made and second. Any questions or comments? Anybody from the audience? Again, seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
New business J, Fire Building and Life Safety Code Amendments. Board to consider an ordinance which amends and clarifies various sections of 2003 editions and the 2012 editions of the International Fire Codes and International Building Codes relating to wireless transmission and supervision of fire alarms, and the 2012 edition of the Life Safety Code regarding residential sprinklers. Chief Weiss.
Thanks, Mayor. These amendments do not alter the village's requirements for wireless transmission and supervision of fire alarms, which have been in place for years, or the requirements for residential sprinklers. Instead, the amendments clarify existing language in the code for the benefit of the public. Additionally, the amendments remove the language requiring phasing in of these alarm systems, which was inadvertently included in these code sections. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you.
John wants to add anything or not?
No, I just said the language back in 2011 or so, when the ordinance and the local codes were amended, wasn't as clear as it should be. Didn't really spell out what current practice was, and it was a real complicated discussion over the course of several meetings, and the ordinance didn't really state what the intention was. So Larry Kaufman and Jim Connolly have come and said, let's clean this up a little bit so it's clear. We now reference the NFPA 72 standard that the wireless alarm providers have to comply with, which has been a requirement all along. We now just make it clear so anyone looking at this knows what the standard is.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve, Barry.
Second, Nero.
Motion made and second to approve as presented. Any questions or comments? Board, audience? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
We're going to move back to the new business that we postponed to the end of the new business. That's item C, stormwater management funding. The board is going to hear a staff presentation reviewing the options for funding a stormwater management program. Communications Director McIntyre.
Thank you very much. All right. It's not a new topic for the community, and we've been discussing it at great length in detail for about a year and a half now. So what we're going to discuss tonight is do a recap on where we're at, but then specifically go into details about possible funding options. Maybe. All right. Having a bit of a connection difficulty here, just.
You had a half an hour to be ready.
Half an hour.
Thanks for putting me on the spot there. Oh, we're having some connection difficulties. Let's see if we, there we go. All right. These two photos here are from April of 2013. Everybody remembers this historic flooding, and not unique to Westmont, throughout northern Illinois. It's worth repeating, this is not a Westmont unique issue. It is all the communities around us have to deal with this, and it's a very challenging situation for all of Northern Illinois. A recent timeline of the past 10 years, from 2004 to 2013, a significant amount of increased heavy rainfall incidents resulting in increased area flooding concerns. Just mentioned April 2013. Immediately following that flood, the village board authored the creation of our Stormwater Management Committee. That committee consisted of residents from throughout the community. A total of 14 individuals were on that committee, and they represented all of the community. We divided Westmont into 14 geographic areas, and we had representation from each of those areas. So it's important to know that the folks on this committee weren't from the most influenced areas. They were from throughout the entire community. That group was very diligent and very serious in their pursuit of this topic and started meeting on a twice-a-month schedule. And 6 months later, came before the village board, October 2013, to put forth specific recommendations, about 7 of them, with the major recommendation being the creation of a stormwater utility. That was their recommendation at that time. It is important to note the main emphasis on the creation of the stormwater utility. It was in regards to revenue, and that is in regard to creating a dedicated and ongoing revenue source. After that time, the village accepted those recommendations and continued to move forward. We hired the AMEC consulting firm, and they did a feasibility study and developed details regarding the utility. This past fall and winter, we've continued to do public education, and within that time frame, some additional options kind of came forth. The village board recommended that we look into a sales tax funding option, and so that's part of what's being introduced tonight in a very comprehensive manner. Timeline going forward. This month and next month, the village board will be considering these options, and a decision will need to be made by the end of January, which way we're going to go, because that's our filing deadline with the county. And then ultimately, if we're going to be on the referendum ballot for April of 2015, we have to have all these answers in place by the end of January. But ideally, probably, we're looking at hopefully getting a decision from the board at the first meeting in January, because especially if it's a utility fee option, there's a lot of staff work to be done once that decision is made. Why are we here? Urban sprawl, changing ecosystem, which is a result of urban sprawl, and then inherited infrastructure. Basically, this is an infrastructure issue. We need to improve our stormwater management infrastructure, storm sewers. The committee, when they got together, like I said, they were from all over the community, but instantly they bonded as a group, and they recognized that this is not an issue for those who are most affected. As this is an infrastructure issue, it is a community-wide issue. For this problem to be dealt with effectively, we have to deal with infrastructure improvements throughout the entire community. So it's a community issue. That's what the committee had decided, and that's the way we've moved forward with our thought process. Why does it need to be addressed? It seems obvious, but just to go through these. Improve quality of life, address increased flooding issues, ensure life safety, make infrastructure improvements, and all of that would increase property values if we act on that. I'm going to go through some photos just as a reminder of some of the areas that have been hardest hit in our community. But it's not limited to the 7 areas that I'm going to reference right now. I think when we did our prioritization matrix, we came up with over 50 areas have been identified. And we're not talking about individual properties or addresses. 50 areas have been identified, but some of them include St. Joseph's Creek's watershed, which includes King Arthur Court. This photo is right across the street from that, but it's part of the same watershed. This is Northeast Acres and the Warwick Avenue and surrounding watershed. Continued Traube Relief Sewer System as well. And then the Northwest Acres, Park Street, surrounding watershed. This photo here is probably the home that was hardest hit in April 2013, but as you can see, the water was quite significantly high on the first floor. Chicago Avenue, Washington Street, Richmond and Grant. Once again, Richmond and Grant, this is Leavitt Park. This is actually behind our police fire facility at 500 North Cass. Still the same area. And so now we're to the big question, and that is, how much is it going to cost to deal with this issue? Our consulting firm took a look at the studies we've done thus far and then projected based upon the areas we have not studied comprehensively, because that costs money to do those studies. But ultimately, they came up with a figure of $30 million. $30 million to significantly address these stormwater issues. So then, of course, the question is, how do we finance these important but costly initiatives? Spencer Parker, our finance director, put together this stormwater funding options matrix. There's two basic questions to ask. Who's going to pay for this and how we're going to pay for this? So who has already been answered. Since this is an infrastructure issue and the issue needs to be dealt with by the entire community, who would be the entire community in terms of who would pay for this? And then how, that's why we're going through this tonight. We're talking about either taxes or another method, and specifically, we're talking about a local sales tax referendum or a utility fee referendum. Either of these solutions requires us to go before the voter. So this would be a referendum. If the board chooses to move forward in that direction, it would be this upcoming April, first Tuesday. And ultimately, the voters would decide the answer on this. With it being a referendum question, we will reiterate this every time we put forth a presentation. The village is not allowed to advocate for or against the referendum. We're only allowed to provide factual information, and that's what we're going to do tonight as well as we move forward. But there's a lot of education regarding this, especially regarding the utility fee. It's not an easy process. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to learn. So there's quite a bit of public education needed to get our residents up to speed and make a good decision. So first, we're going to talk about the stormwater utility option for funding. The pros for this method would be that it's potentially considered a fair method for determining payment. Basically, it's related to impermeable surface on your property. Includes incentives to reduce long-term cost. But then that final one there is the main thing, and that it's an ongoing, stable, dedicated revenue stream for the program. The cons may be opposed by the referendum. So if it's voted down, then we don't have a plan at that point. Then we're kind of starting over. But I've kind of mentioned this in some of our previous presentations. If it's voted down, it's an endorsement for the status quo. And so that's what residents would need to understand, that that's what that result would be. Other cons, takes time to set it up and requires ongoing administrative staff time to do the stormwater utility fee. How would the fee be determined? It's based on impervious area on each parcel, and there's a measurement which is referred to as an ERU, which is an equivalent runoff units. One ERU in Westmont is 2,950 square feet, which is the average square feet of impervious area for a single-family home. So that's the average in Westmont. And then through our consultant and through our ad hoc committee that met for months over this past summer, they came up with a 3-tiered system, so that way it could provide some equity in terms of folks paying different rates for their use of the utility. But under 1,900 square feet or 0.7 ERU would be approximately a $7 per month fee. Tier 2, which represents, I believe, 70% of our community, would be a $10 per month fee. And then Tier 3, which would be the highest, about $13 per month. This is what's proposed. Ultimately, the board would decide all the details regarding the utility. There's a lot of work to be done yet if we go the utility route, but ultimately this information would be clearly spelled out and outlined in a utility ordinance. Here's a range of utility fees in Illinois. Aurora currently pays $3.45 per month, Downers Grove $8.94, and Winnetka $21.83. That's monthly. As you can see, the rate is directly related to the population. So if you have a large population, you're able to charge a lower rate. If you have a smaller population, chances are to get the revenue that you need to address your issues, then your rate's going to go up.
But that's population of owned property? Or is it going by population of the whole community?
That's the community. That's the community. So I just spoke to single-family home and how that rate would be determined. A different methodology would be used for non-residential rates, where there would not be a tiered system. Instead, business properties would pay an exact amount based upon what their exact ERU measurement is. And so here's some examples. For instance, Westview Hills Middle School, it's listed here as having 58 ERUs, so their monthly fee would be $556. The high one there on this particular sheet is Jewel Osco at 208 ERUs, would potentially pay over $2,000 per month.
And Larry, just to point out.
Sure.
There's nothing in the community that would be exempt. Everybody this would apply to.
Ultimately, that would be a board decision, but that was the recommendation of the groups that got together and talked about this. So the ad hoc committee, previous to that, the stormwater committee, everyone who spoke up felt that this is a community issue, so everyone needs to be part of that solution. And we had representation from the business community and churches at the ad hoc committee. And so that's kind of where
It's not a tax, so it's not tax exempt for churches, non-for-profits, et cetera. It's a utility fee, so just like churches pay for water, they would pay for this.
Exactly. To talk a little bit more in depth about the charges that might apply to a commercial property, we're going to use standard market as an example. Here you can see an aerial view of their property. Obviously, a lot of impervious area. The details are impervious areas over 138,000 square feet. So their ERU calculation is 46.8, which would result in a monthly fee of approximately $450 and over $5,000 a year. However, we're going to be talking in just a moment about incentives and credits. And that's different things that properties can do to reduce their utility fee. In this particular case, because they've done a lot of stormwater management already on their property, not only it helps their property, but surrounding properties, they potentially would be eligible for a 50% credit, which would then bring down their fee to closer to $2,700. And that would be the case for all businesses that would take a look at what their total ERU is and then take a look at incentives and credits and then come up with the actual fee. Regarding incentives and credits, incentives are a one-time reduction, credits are an ongoing reduction. Examples would include rainwater barrels, rain gardens, permeable pavers, green roofs, quite a sizable list there. And that is to encourage property owners to manage their stormwater management on their property. And ultimately, this would be defined within the ordinance, which would reference an incentives and credits policy, which would list all of the different options, as well as what that means in terms of how much your monthly fee would be reduced. Moving on to option 2, sales tax.
Can I ask one question before I go on this? As I know I'm going to get asked for it in Oakwood, since it has the lake, does this now give everybody in the association a credit that has property there, since they all drain into it? And so does Ogden Avenue and Ty Warner Park and everything else.
That was one of our first questions at one of our public.
That's right.
And we turned to Manager may to answer.
What was the answer?
And I'm going to turn to him again.
Well, to answer generally, the lake is actually the detention basin or a retention basin. It is the stormwater management device for, it's one of 3 stormwater basins in the subdivision. But it's also the detention basin like any development would have. In Oakwood, it's large because the development is large, but just having a detention basin by itself is not a credit. It's something that's already required to do. That's to minimize the effect before and after construction on the downstream property. Now, if they were doing things above and beyond, or the standard markets, or these developers and the permeable pavers and the efforts that are made above and beyond the minimum, those would be incentives to encourage better, more stormwater management and help reduce that fee. And that's true on residential properties too.
But if Standard Market has to maintain that infrastructure of their underground retention, and I think, what else, do they have something else there too, or is it just?
Bioswale.
Bioswale. They have to maintain that.
They do have to maintain it.
Okay, but they're getting a credit. Oakwood maintains the lake.
Standard Market, Oakwood, any detention basin, the water is detained, but it still leaves the property. So there's still stormwater management outside of the development. It's just how it gets passed through and at what rate. That's what the detention basin changes. How quick it leaves the property or how slow it leaves the property.
Oakwood would be the largest example of a responsibility being the homeowners, but we've got a number of smaller ones where the
Carlton
detention
Court.
are the responsibility of homeowners.
Carlton Court,
Yeah.
and it's sizable.
And I think what the village has done is we went away from the 80s when we accepted all those detention basins, and to the point where those are responsibility of the.
Except for we did take over one by the fire department, didn't we? Because it was easier to have us
Some we
maintain
did,
it than
yes.
somebody else?
Yes.
It's a good example in that some detention basins are designed and maintained. Sometimes they're just on easements on private property, and other times they're outlots. So to add to the question and to complicate the answer is, does the credit go to the association who owns the parcel that the detention basin's sitting on, or is the credit, I don't know how to answer
And
that.
I can mention that this was a conversation that came up during our ad hoc committees with the consultant. And because there were several people attending those meetings who fell into a similar situation, including Oakwood, but there were some other examples. And there was conversation that ultimately would be a board decision to define what would be incentives and credits.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you. So now we're going to move on to option 2, which is sales tax. And what we've identified here as the positives include that it would be administered by the state through a sales tax. Therefore, it'd be easier to create and less staff time to implement. It would be a continuing revenue for future maintenance, just like the utility fee. But the additional benefit on this side, potentially, how you view it, would be that there would be non-resident contribution. So anyone from outside of the community making a purchase in town for your general sales tax would be contributing to the fund, or pay that tax. The cons, once again, may be opposed at referendum. If it's opposed at the referendum, we're back to square one. The sales tax would be in addition to our current places for eating tax, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Also, businesses would not contribute to this directly. So, for instance, a moment ago, I showed the Standard Market example where they would potentially be contributing about $2,500 per year. In this case, they would, the sales tax would go through their business and go to the state and then come back to us, but they would not be contributing directly, which was a point that was brought up by some of our residents at our previous meetings. Also, administrative costs for a tax cap solution, which actually I need to remove that one because we've since talked about how that would not be an option, so I will change that particular item. Going into more detail about a sales tax referendum option. If we were to propose or consider local sales tax increase of 1%, that 1% sales tax may generate $1.8 to $2 million a year. Referendum language, which we'll see here in just a moment, would earmark that revenue for stormwater and infrastructure. Local sales tax, general sales tax would go from 7.25 to 8.25.
And Larry, where were we when we were home rule? Just for.
We were 0.5, so that was 7.75.
Go ahead.
When we were home rule, we had a 0.5 sales tax. But this would take us, if we go with the 1%, take us 8.25. Once again, the concern would be how that might affect our businesses that currently pay the places for eating tax, which is about 125 businesses in the community. Currently, they are paying 8.75. So if you add a 1% on top of that, it takes you up to 9.75. And so the question that's come forth is, how would we compare? How would we be competitive with our neighboring communities? So this slide here gives a little bit of that information. Right now, almost 70% of our DuPage municipalities have a local general sales tax. We do not. Of those 70% of the municipalities that do have a local general sales tax, the majority of those have the 1% or higher. So in terms of how would we be competitive or less competitive with our neighbor, basically what this graph says is that it would be very competitive with what other communities in DuPage County is doing, minus the addition of the 1% on top of the 1.5 places for eating.
Can I just point out that we looked at, part of the committee, we looked at every opportunity, if we decide to go with this one, of how we can make the places to eat exempt. And we've had John look into it, we looked into it, and there's no way, so if we apply this, it has to apply across everybody, so.
I guess the question is, if it's 70%, what I want to know is, I want to know if it's our neighbors. Neighbors doesn't mean Bartlett and Wheaton and West Chicago. What does Clarendon Hills, Hinsdale, Downers Grove, Darien, and Willowbrook have? Because the residents could sit there and say, I'll just go eat in another town because next door to us is cheaper.
Yep.
I think we have to just make sure.
Sure.
You knew there were slides coming next.
I'm
don't
sorry.
you? Yeah, he
Been
said.
to the
you
meeting
and him
evidently,
worked
huh?
together.
Perfect transition. Unfortunately, this particular slide, is small, so I apologize. But as you can see here in the yellow list are adjacent neighbors. So Hinsdale is at 2%, Darien 1%, Downers Grove 1%. As you can see, the ones that I just referenced have the 1% municipal sales tax. Currently, we have 0. So if we went with a 1%, we would just be on par with them. Not all of them have the places for eating tax. As you can see from the communities that we polled, this was the information we received. It's approaching half of the communities in DuPage now have a places for eating tax. I'm going to guess that number is going to grow. Ultimately, the question that's asked is, will we remain competitive? And what kind of came up in our discussions with the community when we did our outreach, basically people's spending habits are based upon what they normally do. They go to the restaurants that they normally do. They go to the grocery store that they normally do. Lots of times it's based on geography. And so, for instance, the question that I would ask, does, anyone who brings that question forth, do they by chance know what the sales tax is in Lombard or Villa Park or Elmhurst, anywhere? The reality is no. So while it's definitely a concern and something to talk about, when you think of it that way, most people are not thinking about how they spend their money based upon sales tax. Going to continue here. We got just a few more screens to get through, hopefully. All right. So how will this look on the referendum, on the ballot? Potentially. Option 1 for the sales tax could read, Shall the corporate authorities of the Village of Westmont be authorized to levy a non-home rule sales tax at the rate of 1% solely for expenditures on a municipal stormwater management program and public infrastructure? And I'd like to just ask Attorney Zemanek real quick, because some of the questions that came up from the public, once again, would this ensure a dedicated revenue stream to what we're promoting it as?
And the state statute says for a non-home rule sales tax that's being considered, it must be used for public infrastructure, and it defines what public infrastructure includes, which does include stormwater management. As worded here, it could be used for stormwater management, but it also could be used for other public infrastructure needs, whether it be streets or whatever. So this is not the tightest language to ensure that there is a dedicated source solely for or primarily for stormwater management.
Can we do that locally, or is that?
Yes, you can change the question, and Larry's going to present another option.
So here's option 2 of the same question that sort of spells out what percentage of that 1% would be dedicated to which portion of infrastructure improvements. Shall the corporate authorities of the Village of Westmont be authorized to levy a non-home rule sales tax at the rate of 1%, with 75% of said tax revenue dedicated to expenditures on a municipal stormwater management program, and with 25% of said tax revenue dedicated to expenditures on public infrastructure? Here's why that percentage potentially can be justified. With your stormwater management solutions, that will involve streets. You know, we've talked about permeable pavers and things along those lines. And so this would help spell out that 75% would definitely go to that stormwater, storm sewer infrastructure solutions, and 25% towards other infrastructure. The question to be asked to the board is, does this complicate things? If this is the question that goes before the voters,
I think
it's
if we
kind of
look
wordy.
at past histories, it's gonna, can't we just put on there, we'll fix the flooding problem?
Yeah, really, be simple.
I mean,
Well, the first question, yes.
Just change it to flooding.
I mean, just, that's what the problem is, everybody knows it.
Keep it simple.
You get somebody that hits in there, and I'm not gonna pick on any one individual or group, but I'm gonna sit there and go, they're gonna look at it and go, what?
What are they
Next,
trying-
Yeah.
and won't even vote on it,
What are they trying to pull now?
All right.
because it's too complicated for, you know.
So that's a good point. You certainly can change out municipal stormwater management program with flooding. But to Larry's question, do you want to say flooding and public infrastructure, or do you want to show a percentage for each?
Well, I agree with Larry that the infrastructure is part of it, and there's going to be ongoing situations, whether it's water mains or other things that are going to help improve that. So I think infrastructure almost needs to be in there. And I agree with, it seems like what the rest of the board, the simpler the better. The more complicated, I think that
Yeah.
it's
Larry,
it's confusing.
Just, and the board may know this, but car dealerships are exempt from any additional sales tax increase by the state of Illinois, right, Larry?
Just a question, whether John or Larry, when does the places for eating tax expire?
We did
The
not-
bonds are paid, is that it?
Yeah, they're tied to the bonds.
Which is a 10-year?
20-year bond issue,
20
right?
But the tax wouldn't automatically
But there- yeah,
expire, would it?
No, then we'd have to.
We'd have to do something.
We never, yeah, it's just pledged to it.
So there is no official expiration date for the tax. The bonds are 20-year bonds, but we could refund them after 10 years. So after 10 years, there would be the possibility of refinancing the bonds and pledging a different revenue source. So at that point in time, we could, if we wanted to, say, we have another revenue source, be it sales tax or whatever, that we're going to use to fund the payment of these bonds instead of places for eating. But we can't do anything until 10 years from now. But that doesn't mean that something will automatically happen in 10 years, unless it's up to the board in 10 years to make that decision.
And one other thought, and I don't know if you're going to get to it, Larry, because we're jumping ahead of maybe a little bit, but 1% is shown, but the suggestion was maybe only 0.5% because of the places eating. Instead of pushing them up to 9.75, they would go to 9.25. And we would then be back to the other sales tax, where we were at home rule.
Correct.
That would then, that way would just cut that 1.8 million in half.
Correct.
900,000. And I think Places to Eat, if I'm right, Spencer, was about 800,000 projected a year. So a $10 million bond issue, 0.5% would allow us to issue, with only 100 to 200,000 left over for annual ongoing stormwater. So a 1% would give you 15 to 20 million that you could, so that's just, I think we were looking at, if we choose this, maybe toning it down to a lower percent because of the Place to Eat, or leave it at 1%, so.
Sure. And as we talked about these different options, you know, a moment ago I showed the slide that said it's estimated that it might take $30 million to address these issues. The other question to ask is, what will the community bear? What would they be willing to support to address these things? None of these options that we're talking about gets us to that 30 million mark, even though that's the possible total of these projects. So as the mayor suggested, it's up to the board to, you know, figure out, is it 1%, is it less? You know, all of those specifics.
And Larry, if I can interrupt, regardless of whether it's a stormwater utility or a sales tax, I'd recommend, well, with a stormwater utility, the board would have to pass an ordinance implementing the utility before the referendum, so it's clear to the voters, here's how it's going to work. And it would be effective only if the referendum question passes. Likewise, I'd recommend with the sales tax, if you're going to go that route, that you pass an ordinance that specifies a percentage or some other way that you're going to dedicate this to solving the flooding problems primarily. So it's on the books, it's passed, and it's effective if the referendum passes.
Larry, sorry, did you want to respond to that?
Nope, that's exactly, for the stormwater utility fee, it's mandatory that you have to do that. And of course, it's a good recommendation to do that for the sales tax as well. Basically, be transparent with the voters, let them know exactly how this is going to be implemented and what it's going to be used for. Final potential question, a referendum question, this time as it relates to a stormwater utility fee. Potentially, the language would read, shall the ordinance authorizing the creation and operation of a Westmont stormwater utility be adopted? I believe all of you saw this probably back around August when we were talking about this the first time in regards to the specifics of the utility fee. And that's kind of...
Just a couple of questions. Have you talked to the committee that made the initial recommendation to see what they felt about the tax versus the utility fee?
Different members of those groups have continued to be active, and so a lot of them are fully aware. And
They
yeah,
discussed
I mean,
it
there's
during their committee. I mean, the option, not sales tax, but tax-based, was reviewed when they came to the conclusion that they recommended the utility fee.
They recommended-
Bruce, most of them are looking at that to encourage conservation or going green.
Right, well,
as a
and
method.
that's my next
And
point
equity.
was, you lose all that incentive if you just throw it onto the sales tax.
But the flip side is, all of our presentations, except for one, was a little bit the other way, but I would say 60 to 70% of the people we presented this to now favor sales tax. The general public we've been making these presentations to.
Because of out-of-town residents picking up some
That,
of
they're
that.
not
tax.
going to be hit on their property, and you know, you look at it in churches, and Downers is going through that. And you can give credits, you can create grant programs and different things.
Because it's curious to me, I wonder how a business like Jewel can all of a sudden budget an extra, you know, $26,000, $30,000, and how does that affect our business community, is a strong concern for me.
And that is a question that has been raised by the public when we've done the outreach. You know, how will this affect the business community? Will it hurt them? And there's pros and cons to either option, you know, depending on how you want.
Because our car dealers are probably very much affected, correct, with the utility?
No, they don't pay it.
With
Well, they would have paid a sales
Oh,
tax.
the
Tax,
utility.
right, yeah,
But the
yeah.
utility,
Yeah,
I
right,
think,
right, yeah.
they would obviously be affected because,
But conversely, their stormwater impact on the community is not addressed, their participation is not addressed in the tax-based version.
Either way,
I mean, it's,
sales tax or,
the rest of the community is paying that portion.
And it can be locked, if it was a sales tax, it can be locked in 75, 25, or whatever the formula is, so it cannot be altered in the future.
If it's by referendum, locking it in, it cannot be altered.
Without, could you do another referendum if you wanted?
You could do another referendum.
That's the only way to change it.
Correct.
When do we need to decide which way we're gonna, or what we're gonna put on them?
I believe the January 8th meeting is the deadline.
So we make the decision on January 8th. That would leave us the rest of January and all of February and March to continue with public education, which I would hope we would do.
But the feedback tonight, or not tonight, but by the end of the calendar year, we need to know which ordinance to write in.
Yeah,
because really you're saying the next board meeting is January 8th, right?
Yeah.
right.
and if we do the utility, there's a little bit more work that has to be done. We have to create the entire tiers. and what
Yeah, a lot of
credits.
legwork has already been done on that in terms of the creation of the ordinance through both the consultant and John. But yes, there's definitely more work to follow
But
through on
the
that.
ordinance has to be passed before the referendum is
Yes.
voted on. So we've got time to work through the
To work on
details of the ordinance if you want to go that route.
Well, I just have one suggestion, is once we figure out which way we're gonna go, utilities, sales tax, whatever we decide, is, and I don't know how, financially, how much this is gonna cost, or if we even can come up with a specific list of projects and the result of those projects to show the residents specifically what we're gonna do and approximate timelines. I know we don't like doing timelines, I know we don't like giving specifics, but I honestly think that's what it's gonna take to sell this, is you gotta show them what the effects are gonna be. To tell them you're gonna fix flooding, that's great, but what specifically are you gonna do? I think we can look at other government bodies that tried putting stuff on the ballot, it might not work so specific. We need to be specific here, and it's gonna be tough. I don't know if there's cost associated with it, hiring a consultant to help us figure it out. I mean, we know some of the projects, but I think it's a key part of this, is having the specifics.
It adds a trust factor to some extent because now you're kind of held to it because you've already said it did.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that already the feedback that I've heard is that, the village is going to have a bunch more money.
Yeah, what are they gonna do with it?
And if it's not designated or earmarked, I think that's concerning for people that could potentially
Absolutely.
vote for it.
You know, year
And
one after
also-
passing it, we're gonna do X.
It's also tied to the economy, so as things improve, that the tax-based solution provides a bigger jump on progress.
Sure.
Or not.
Or the other way.
Or the other way.
Well, that is a great point to the sales tax versus the property, that it could go one of two ways. I mean, it could leave you short, or it could leave us in a windfall, whereas the tax, the property tax version is consistent. We would
And
know what we would have.
Whichever it is, it doesn't prevent us from doing it, it prevents the speed at which we can approach it, and how many years it takes to accomplish everything.
It's not a property tax, though.
I'm sorry.
It's a utility fee.
Utility.
Do we hear from,
Or a sales tax.
do we hear from the other Larry?
Remember what I told you to say?
Larry.
No.
Remember what I told you?
Daryl, where's Daryl?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to, any feedback from the businesses or your take on how it would impact.
Questions? So the information we're presenting tonight, we need to put in the hands of the business community so they can get a better handle on what we're talking about. I know from talking to a couple members who have asked questions about tonight, caterers, for example, people who sell bakeries, in terms of outside the community, having to compete with other businesses in other communities, will they be at an advantage or disadvantage? So as soon as we can get information in everybody's hands, we'll have a better handle on all that.
Do you have some opportunities to do that before January?
Well, definitely. Definitely. We'll actually have a gathering next Tuesday morning. Our quarterly huddle would be one example to talk a little bit about this. And we can always pull together other gatherings to talk specifically about this also, so we can get more input. Thank you.
Right now, we have one more community outreach event planned for next Tuesday. It'll be part of the District 201 school board meeting here in this room. But if any group, including the chamber, is interested in any public outreach whatsoever, we're looking forward to those opportunities. Contact us, we'll set up those dates and times, and we will go through this in detail. Ultimately, one of the messages, there's many messages to repeat and, try to hit home, but one is that this issue was brought to us by the residents. They showed up in force to discuss this problem because it affected them so greatly. And from the beginning to the end, it's going to be a resident solution. And so the residents have guided us and directed us the entire path, and ultimately for this to be passed, it's up to them. So of course, we need to do the outreach, we need to do the education, and in the end, it'll be their decision.
So I guess to Manager May, that hypothetically neither scenarios pass. Are we looking forward, as far as next year's budget, to still include our jetting and other programs that have really seemed to have helped since the 2012
Certainly.
floods?
Yeah, the call it routine maintenance, or what should be routine maintenance, will continue in either scenario, but that helps what we have now. It does not make a dent into the bigger issues that were identified that make up that $30 million issue.
Because I think that we need to be conscious, if it doesn't pass, that we still want to increase the jetting and make sure that that maintenance is part of our budget.
Yes. Trustee Nero made that point during the workshop, too.
I would have came.
Yeah.
But I think the point should also be made in that scenario if that happens. I mean, that's all very minimal. That's not going to solve the issues that we have in the community. So I think we have to be careful how we phrase that, because, just this normal maintenance it's not going to fix it. And we don't want to give the impression that it will.
The photos in the early part of the presentation, ditching, jetting, cleaning, does not affect any of that.
Just helps it not get worse, I guess. Huh?
Doesn't hurt, it helps a little. So,
Well, Larry, great job.
and, any questions from the audience? Anybody? No, you have to come up there. You're not camera shy, I know that.
Who's here?
You sit through the whole thing, you got to come up and tell us who you are.
Bob Reed, 215 West Trowbridge. The tax, the 1% tax, through what we've gone through, my wife is the one that's doing this, saving receipts. Subway is charging 9.25 tax. Majors is 8.75, and Taco Bell is a different tax altogether, and don't remember what it is.
And they're all in Westmont?
They're all in Westmont, right on Ogden. You can tell I'm a fine connoisseur of all restaurants.
Certainly.
And also, she wanted me to ask, collecting this tax, who is responsible for that? I mean, who from the village keeps track of how much each restaurant is paying so that we can get that?
Here he comes.
Asked and answered.
Once your receipts, too, to show it.
Yeah. Seriously, we should look into that.
Yeah,
That's
so I
we
did make
talked
note of
about
those
that.
businesses,
Sending
and
a
as we find
secret
businesses that are
spender.
still, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, we talked about sending out a secret spender and going to places to.
I volunteered Ginny and I to be secret shoppers. We can do
He's not
that.
funding it, he's just.
Let's clarify.
Yes, so we know there are some businesses that are still collecting the home rule sales tax that was eliminated quite a long time ago, and they don't need to be collecting it. They're still remitting it to the state, and the state's still then passing it on to us. Unfortunately, we don't know who those businesses are, although now we know a couple of them.
It's Subway.
And so I'll be contacting them and letting them know that they should really take a look at the online state's website to tell them how much they should actually be charging. Whatever they have collected from their customers as tax does have to be transmitted on to the village, because they can't just collect the tax and keep it. But so in finance, we do get a record of the places for eating tax that is paid to the village. So the sales tax portion goes directly to the state, and then the state aggregates it and gives the village a big lump sum deposit. The places for eating tax is paid directly to the village, where we keep track of it and monitor that. So we'll definitely be reaching out to Subway and Taco Bell and talking with them about that.
And you know, Spencer, that makes sense because places, the eating tax pushes everybody to 8.75. And
Yes.
our home rule was 0.5, that's the 9 1/4 then.
Yes.
Still got them all.
So, yep, thank you.
Any other comments? Larry, anything, I guess the bottom line is that we need to decide as a board what course of action to present, and then refining each one to where if we choose one, then we have to, in detail, go through it and decide what language and how we're going to create the tables, or 1%, 0.5%, yeah, so.
First step is the methodology.
Methods, yes.
Besides the car dealers, is there anyone else that would be exempt on the sales tax, John?
There's a short list. Spencer probably knows better than me, but it's pharmacies, I think restaurants.
So it's not individual types of businesses that are exempt, it's the types of things that they sell. So anybody that's selling a titled vehicles are exempt from the sales tax, as are what's called qualifying food and drugs. So grocery store type of food and then drugs would be exempt from it. So if a car dealer is selling auto parts, then those parts would still be subject to the sales tax, but the titled vehicle itself would not. If there's a restaurant that is selling some things as, restaurant foods and other things as grocery type items in different places in the store, then the grocery items that they're selling could still be at the regular lower, like 1.75% rate, and wouldn't be changed with this non-home rule sales tax.
Unless it can be consumed on the premises, and then it's subject to the...
Right, if it's prepared for immediate consumption. But one of the things to make it qualifying food in grocery store versus the higher tax rate of 7%, the 7.75%, is that it's not prepared for immediate consumption. So in order to be qualifying food and drug, it has to not be prepared for immediate consumption.
And no place to sit, that's the other one of the, you have to be able to consume it on site too?
Right, so to get our 1.5% places for eating tax, there has to be seating on premises to be eating it on the premises. To trigger the state's 7.75%, then that's simply, it's 7.25%. I'm all confused now. So to trigger the higher state rate, then it just has to be for immediate consumption, whether or not they have it on the premises. So for example, like a takeout pizza place would have to pay the higher percentage to the state because it's ready to eat, but they don't necessarily have to pay the places for eating tax if they don't have seating there for people to eat there.
Wow.
So anything that is the lower tax rate for the state is exempt from our places for eating tax, but not everything that's a higher tax rate for the state is our places for eating tax, if that's kind of confusing.
That's good, I've seen.
So I guess the ones that get complicated are
I've seen
really the
Spencer.
grocery stores that serve food.
Yeah, those are
Standard
the biggest
Market,
ones.
Jewel.
Yes.
You also carry around a couple folding chairs and plop it down in places. Charge.
Now they're seating.
I've seen you do that, all
Yeah,
right.
good plan.
TV trays.
Any other comments, questions at this time? All right, thank
It's a
you,
lot to
Larry.
consider.
Wow. Thanks, Larry, we got to consider it. And we do have one next Tuesday, it's here, right?
Correct.
The School District 201, we've been down to Marker, Westview Hills, District 60,
Library.
Library. And at Sweet and Savory last Saturday, we had a discussion about it, so. All right, moving on to agenda item 11, miscellaneous. I think at this point, Bruce.
One brief thing, there's a red velvet cake in there that I can't take home after the meeting.
And since there is not an executive session, I think he's requesting that you at least go in there and get a piece of cake at the, John.
So just a question for my own edification. We had this great presentation tonight. The next meeting is January 8th, as things are scheduled. We need to prepare an agenda, which is going to have an option, not only what the option is, but how the referendum's going to be worded. When's that going to be figured out, if not tonight?
Oh,
That's why you're here, you're supposed to.
oh, that's right, because you need it for the ordinance.
No, you're right. On the agenda, you got to put one or the other, whatever you're going to address, right?
You could put both.
And discuss it.
And vote for one and decide then. You can call a special meeting, sit down for an hour, have a powwow after you've had some time to digest this, or you can figure it out tonight.
Can it be in a committee
special
meeting?
meeting, or can we hold them individually?
You can poll them individually. It's, sometimes there is a benefit in a group discussion. If you have an upcoming budget meeting or something like that, a special meeting otherwise called, or even a committee meeting when everyone's going to be present, you can tack this on if you have the time to fit it in. Could be a.
Is there a committee meeting on the 8th? I mean, the agenda could say both. And we could discuss it at a committee meeting, before the board?
We can still discuss it during the board meeting.
Yeah.
I suppose we could have both options on the agenda, and one should be
Yeah.
voted
So-
positively and one declined.
And to add administrations.
So John, on the 8th,
All right, that's a good
if
good
we
thinking.
have both, if we discuss both and we make the decision on the 8th, then do we have to approve an ordinance by a certain date?
Yes. My information shows it's by January 18th, so the 8th is,
So we'd have to
have to decide by January.
because we'd
8th.
have to vote on the ordinance then,
Or a special meeting after
or
January.
have a special meeting.
And if the sales tax is selected, we'd have to decide in 0.5% or 1% by the 8th as well.
Correct.
So really, there's three things that potentially we could put on that agenda to vote on.
My personal preference is to figure it out before the 8th.
Yeah.
I think it'll allow for a more efficient meeting and more effective message to the public.
I know we canceled our meeting for the end of this month, but maybe we should revisit the idea of having it maybe on a different day.
You mean the 25th?
Well, what are your plans on the 25th? Can you come in, could you come at 3? Everybody available at 3?
After dinner.
Bruce will bring a cake.
All right, Bruce.
Or,
bring a cake.
maybe a different day. I mean, like maybe the 30th, or I don't even know what day of the week
22nd.
that is, but
Maybe try to just pull us individually and see how it comes out, and if we need to discuss it up, I mean, I pretty much feel comfortable with the way I'm gonna.
I can tell you right now, I'll go with whatever the group wants, so you can just go ahead.
Does anybody want to say what they're leaning towards right now since the discussion? Steve?
For sales tax.
One a year.
Sales tax?
I think 1%. If you're gonna do it, you do it. You don't do it.
Well,
I'm inclined to agree with that. My concern with the sales tax was that, 15 years from now, a board could say, we're not going to use it for that anymore, but I'm comfortable now that that can't happen.
The referendum would
And believe me,
So-
the people on the committee who are so in favor of this project says they wouldn't even vote for it if it didn't have those strings attached.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I'm leaning towards sales tax 1%. I'd like to add on to that, that we definitely communicate with the businesses and make sure they understand.
Bruce, any thoughts?
Undecided. I want to go to that chamber meeting on Tuesday and see what they have to say, but
Bob, any feelings?
Want to really think about it.
You're in favor of at least one of,
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely, yeah.
and Bruce, you're in favor of at least one, you just don't know.
I don't
which.
know that for sure.
You don't know either, okay.
When you had the initial presentations on this subject, you said 60 to 70% of the feedback you got was in favor of the sales tax option.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And were those people giving you the feedback business residents who aren't necessarily voting residents, or was it
Residential.
residential homeowners?
Or was it residential homeowners that are affected versus homeowners that aren't affected?
I think the ones that did, the one presentation was kind of split a little bit or more towards that. They weren't even, some of them weren't even our residents, because down in the
Sure.
Market homes.
The one,
The
one I
feedback-
was at the library, the first one you had, no one was affected by flooding that was there.
Yeah, and
Not one
everybody
person.
wanted the sales tax.
Right. And the feedback that the mayor is referring to is from our most recent outreach meetings. So 2 at the library, 1 at Marker School District. And I would say 60 to 70% of the total of all those folks were leaning towards the sales tax. The folks that were leaning towards the utility, a couple of those people talked to me afterwards, and, they're learning a lot of information, and trying to make an educated decision. But one of the comments, and even an email, subsequent email I received the next day, was in regards to, let's make sure whatever option we do is not hurting our business community. So I think a lot to think about.
John, is Mays Lake affected by this?
Depends on which one. This being the stormwater utility fee, yes, they have to, everyone in town.
I understand it, but I'm just-
Stormwater utility fee.
Yeah, Holy Trinity, any church, public property, park district,
And that's-
everybody is going to pay the
That's
fee.
largely why I'm leaning now toward sales tax when I think about the schools that are already struggling, the churches that are already struggling, Mays Lake that, is really
Yeah,
struggling.
Plus, others will share this, not just Westmont folks.
Yeah, we've got people
That's
from
really
Downers,
why.
Clarendon Hills,
You
every-
talk about the auto parts from the dealerships, those dealerships are shipped throughout the whole county.
Right.
And that, there's probably a lot of sales tax in parts. I mean, I know we always think of the automobiles, but really factory parts are only bought at dealerships, so.
And when you see the price of the parts?
Exactly.
Yeah.
$1,000.
Most of those dealerships, we were, a couple of them said they make more of their money on repairs and service.
Yeah, I believe it.
Harold, any,
Again, I say that jokingly, but really, I would lean more towards the sales tax, but I will go with what the board's
but
recommendation
you're
is.
definitely in favor of at least putting one on the ballot to try to solve, give it a chance.
I believe like any increase, I think it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I just think that's the reality of the economy and the way people vote.
Yep, and the other reality is that if we are going to aggressively address stormwater problems, the only way you can is another source of revenue, so. All right,
Or a decrease in service somewhere else to
oh, yeah, you take
offset
it,
it?
yeah, yep.
Right,
Yeah, where?
right, no,
But that's right, you cut
Yeah.
somewhere and add. Any other, the consensus is, Steve, you'll kind of
If
poll.
something changes, yeah.
And then, Bruce is going to not say anything to, I'll have Larry can send us an email from what your findings are after you talk to the business community, and then he can poll us after that.
Just sent an email to our village manager. I think the program we have Tuesday mornings, a huddle, and I think this topic will require more time than what would be allowed at that Tuesday meeting. I certainly understand the opportunity to talk about it a little bit at that Tuesday, but we need to go into a more in-depth presentation like we had tonight, and I'd like to work with the village manager and Larry to schedule that presentation.
Just,
But again,
Steve,
I
just one
think-
last thing, I'm not, 1%, 0.5%, I mean, I'm flexible there, I just think sales tax is the way to go. So if the rest of the board wants us halfway, that's fine with me too.
I agree with Harold. At this point, I definitely, I don't know what you're saying, but I definitely prefer the sales tax, but if everyone else decided the utility tax, I would certainly support that, because we have to do something,
Yep.
one way or
And
the
I
other.
believe, I don't want to speak for him, but I believe trustee Addington, since he's the one who kind of came up with the idea of the sales tax, I think
Yeah.
he is more in favor
Yeah.
Safe to say.
of that. And when he's back next time, we'll get some opinions.
Yes. Well, any other and I think Steve can do the poll after the business community gives us some insight. He can inform us, and then he can go around and see what the feeling is. Any other miscellaneous? I do, I know we extended our sympathy to your family, Harold. Again, like to do that again.
Thank you.
And wish everybody great holiday season.
Merry Christmas.
And especially for me, because it's going to be a very joyful, with my first grandchild. So everything's going to be holiday spirit. So again, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Seneca.
Second, Nero.
Motion made and second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
I see the future.
Again, this meeting is adjourned, 8:29. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming.